So we are going to call our meeting to order at 6:06. And does anyone else need to call their meetings to order? Okay, thank you. Okay. 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 It sounds like Jordan, or looks like Jordan's going to be closing the doors tonight. There is a lively band concert that is happening tonight. So if you noticed even more cars in the parking lot tonight, that is what is also happening at the same time as our meeting tonight. Okay, so citizens' comments. Do we have anyone that would like to make any citizens' comments?
I have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be, Brian Herview, Bernardston, Select Board, sorry. The question is, since we're going to be going over the district agreement, will we have availability then to open and discuss? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay. All right. So, district agreement, discussion of draft and vote on final version sent to DESI. So, in your packets, we have the updated, most up-to-date draft district agreement. This encompasses suggestions, edits from the last public forum that was brought to the school committee that we addressed and discussed at our last school committee meeting. It included more feedback from DESI and their guidance. And so as we will have the district draft agreement for reference, but really the document that we will be working through is the suggested edits and school committee decisions. So the document with the chart, that's how we are going to work through and go through the different suggestions and additions and decisions that school committee made at our last school committee meeting. Okay. So for the first one, number 1, we received a town suggestion that towns should elect their own school committee members. Number of appointed versus elected was a conversation. Northfield prefers an election of school committee members versus appointments. And so what we did is we looked at how members are elected to the school committee or appointed. And the school committee looked at the legal guidance, and we had a discussion about this and decided that we are going to leave the draft as is, and we are going to keep the current process, which means each town will have 3 members elected from their town for the school committee board.
Jane Dutcher, Finance Committee from Bernardston, spokesman for the 3 towns. In our meetings, we had not finished the evaluation of using another system for representation on the school committee.
Okay.
We are going to continue that discussion, and we'll let you know how it comes out. Okay. We're not finished discussing this document. We had not finished it before your last meeting.
Okay.
And when you met last week without us, I was surprised because you had asked that it be a collaborative process, but then did not continue a collaborative process. So I'm telling you that we will be meeting to discuss some of these points and let you know our thinking on it.
Sure.
So I don't think that this is ready to send to DESI. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I think as evidenced by our document with the multiple town suggestions that we received as feedback from our last meeting, and administration spent, again, many hours going back to DESI we spent time as a school committee, because we also as a school committee needed to meet and discuss the suggestions that were brought to us from the public forum, and to decide what we think as a school committee. And that's what we did at our last school committee meeting, knowing we were going to have another public forum to review and go over the draft and to update the draft. So that's what we have today, is we have this entire document that proves and makes clear that this was a collaborative process, that all of the suggestions have been highlighted and identified in this document. That is exactly what this entire document is.
Okay, but we were not finished with our work, and we expected to continue it with you because of the wording of the email we got, inviting us to come
Yeah.
to that last meeting and have a collaborative
Yep.
process.
Yep. And so that is what we're continuing to do tonight.
I don't consider what you're doing a collaborative process if
Okay.
you meet individually without us. If we're going to
Okay.
discuss this all together and come to conclusions, we need to do it all together. Since that's not happening, we will be having another meeting, and we will continue our evaluation. Any numbers, any paragraphs in the part document that we had not discussed or did not have a comment on to you means we did not finish our discussion of them. And we
Okay.
will be covering them as well as this one that I just
Yep.
mentioned.
Okay. Okay.
You want me to review the legal options for this one, or do you want to keep them?
Sure, you can, yeah. So we will share with everyone who is present. These are the legal options that we have, that we spend lots of time as a subcommittee previously reviewing, and also spent time at our last school committee meeting reviewing. I'll just wait till they come up.
Ready?
Yep, yeah, if you would like to present.
State law provides for a limited set of options for the election. I am speaking, and I am speaking, thank you. State law provides for,
Jane.
shall I
Jane,
continue?
yep, I would, please don't interrupt. We are sharing additional information that people in the room who may not have seen our school committee meeting or have been at the last public forum, because I recognize new faces, this is for everybody's benefit.
State law provides for a limited set of options for regional school districts in their agreement in terms of how a school committee may be elected. On the screen and in your handouts, you see the language from Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 14E. I'll go through these options briefly. The first option would provide for electing school committee members by members in each town, and the number of school committee members would be proportionate to the populations in the towns. DESE has advised us that it is not a matter of simple rounding. It is clear, however, DESE would have to do a calculation. The school committee would need to identify which census information it wanted to use for determining proportional representation. It is clear that Leiden would have small representation. Bernardston would have more representation. Northfield would have the most representation. Option 1 is silent on when the elections would take place. Option number 2 is similar to what currently exists, however, there is no residency requirement. So for option number 2, residents of all 3 towns would vote for school committee members from all 3 towns, and that would take place, as it does now, at the state's biennial elections that happen in November. There is no way to know exactly how things would play out. However, I think it is fair to guess that given Northfield's larger population and Bernardston's almost as large population and Leiden's small population, it is possible that Northfield would have greater representation on the school committee than exists now. This option is essentially the people with the most votes win from across the 3 towns, regardless of where they live. Option number 3 is the option we have right now, and that is the elections take place at the statewide biennial elections in the fall. People from any town may vote for school committee members from any town. However, there are residency requirements, meaning a certain number of members need to come from each town. The current district agreement provides for 3 members from each town. A revised district agreement could say something different. This is a joke, but it could say 10 members from each town for a total of 30 people. Again, option number 3 is the option that exists right now. Option number 4 was difficult for us to understand even after conversation with Desi. It appears that option number 4 is somehow layered into another option. I am being frank, we could not understand option number 4. Option number 5 has never, in Desi's experience, been used in a K through 12 or pre-K through 12 district. Option number 5 is used by some districts where there might be a secondary regional district with a number of smaller elementary districts, and those smaller elementary districts might vote for the regional school district committee from among the members of the small district school committees. Does that make sense? Should I say that one again?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Option number 5 allows for appointing of school committee members by other locally elected officials. It could be by the select board. The regional district agreement could say the select boards are going to elect or appoint the school committee members. DESE has never seen or approved a regional agreement in this state like that. This option is used by some regional districts where there are smaller, perhaps elementary districts that feed into a single larger district. I'll give I don't know that Frontier uses this example, but many of us know about Frontier. Frontier has got 4 towns at the elementary level. They have 4 separate school committees. The Frontier Regional Committee is a single committee representing all 4 towns. Again, I don't know that they use this. I'm just using this as an example. Option number 5 would provide for having those 4 school committees appoint the school committee members who would serve on the regional secondary school committee. Again, we currently have in place option number 3, and in our district agreement, it specifies that each of the towns will have 3 members. Those members are voted for by everyone across the 3 towns at the state's biennial fall elections. It may be helpful when considering which option to have a deeper understanding of voter turnout at spring town elections and the biennial fall elections. Let me see if I can make that any bigger. No. Okay. This is a bar graph of the number of votes received by every sitting select board member in our 3 towns and every sitting school committee member in our 3 towns. The Northfield bars are light blue and dark blue. Bernardston is green in the middle. Leiden is orange at the bottom. These are apples to oranges comparisons because select boards are voted on only by the residents of the town in which they live. The school committee is voted on by people from 3 towns. However, this graph shows school committee vote totals only for people who voted from the town in which the school committee member lived, i.e., those Northfield bars, that bottom one is 1,241. Mm-hmm. I can read this. Those 1,241 votes were only Northfield residents. So the Northfield Select Board, people currently, and I didn't put names because the names don't matter. This is about what would be the impact of making a decision to switch to town elections in the spring. Northfield Select Board members have received between 90 and 367 votes from town residents. School committee members, and we have a new member who was a write-in candidate with 7 votes. The other 2 folks who were on the ballot received 894, 1,241 votes. In Bernardston, select board members have received between 49 and 80 votes. The school committee member from Bernardston who was named on the ballot had 730 votes from Bernardston residents. A writing candidate from Bernardston had 26. And in Leiden, your select board members had between 75 and 189 votes. The school committee member from Leiden had, just from Leiden residents, 356 votes. A writing candidate had 17 votes. Should I keep going?
Yep.
No.
These are for the sitting members of each select board and school committee, irrespective, their most recent year in which they were elected.
Yep.
I'm going to continue.
Yep. So it's gonna,
I'm
Yep,
going to
so-
continue.
you'll get it. Yep.
Because I know that during a regular election,
Yep.
So,
the town of Bernardston,
Yep.
the select board get the same amount of votes as anybody
Yep.
else.
so this is,
No, so we're,
They're trying to tell us that
yeah.
the school committees are gonna get more votes.
Stan, let us present, please. And then you can make your comments.
this is what the vote totals look like, and this is the apples to oranges when you show the select board votes and the school committee votes, when the school committee votes include votes from all three towns. This is the exact same information represented differently. The blue is the total number of school committee votes received by the seven sitting members of the school committee, and these are only votes from the towns in which they lived. 11 select board members have received 1,849 votes. When you do the apples to oranges, over 8,500 people in our three towns have voted for the sitting members of the school committee, and select board members have received 1,849 votes. The purpose of this presentation was to provide information for the school committee and the towns to consider when the school committee is making its decision about which of the very few options under state law is allowed for the election of school committee members. These data suggest that should the school committee change the district agreement so that elections take place at town meetings, we can expect that fewer people will participate in voting for school committee members. And again, if you go to if you do not hold your votes at the biennial statewide election, you will be forced to use proportional representation because that is what is outlined in option number 1.
So that is what we had discussed. This presentation was at our school committee meeting. We just shared it also tonight. And that is why school committee had decided to leave the draft as is, to stick with number 3, electing its members with residency requirements in district-wide elections to be held at the biennial state elections. So number 2, yep. Could you please come? Yeah, because it's being recorded. Could you please come up to the microphone? Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Catherine DiMatteo, Leiden Select Board member. A couple of things. I mean, you're presenting almost a false narrative in doing this. If the select board members were also voted on at national elections, we would get more people voting.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but
That's the
that doesn't mean that everyone who voted for the school committee member at the national election was actually given that much of a choice. We had of our 3 seats, we had 1 person running. So
Right.
if people could choose not to vote at all
Right.
for that person, which they did because that doesn't equal the number of votes that were cast for in the national election. And to the, write-in was only got 17 votes.
Right.
So it's,
Right.
I mean, when I look down the list, when I was voting, I skipped over the people I didn't know from the other towns because I didn't know who they were, and so I just skipped over them. So at that, that election is not any more accurate representation of what the citizens of the town want, who they want to represent them at the school committee. Now, speaking as the town that will be the most impacted by switching to the agreement that we came to, or the direction we're preferring of the three towns, which is that you vote for your representative from only in your own town elections. We would be supportive of that, even though we would probably end up with one, maybe only one representative. Because once the representatives get on the school committee, I would hope and expect, my expectation is that once you get on the school committee, you're not just representing your town, you're representing the region. So if I want to, I mean, it's easy for me to talk to my rep, Michelle, and now Stephanie, but I shouldn't hesitate to call any of you
Right.
if,
You shouldn't.
as a select board member even, or as a
Yeah,
citizen.
absolutely.
To say, so whether we have one or three, that's not a factor for us. It's being able to participate and have our representatives represent the best interests of the district. So that's why when we had the discussion at the three-town meeting, Leiden, who would be most affected by this, we're still supportive of moving to voting for our own representative in our own, in our own town elections. And I think that this distorts reality a bit, because it isn't apples to apples. And if more people turn out for national elections, if we only had,
Right.
if the select board members were only elected once every 3 or 2 years, whatever it is, then we would also, there would be that many votes.
Yeah.
And if there's two people, if we only had one seat and there were two people running, I would welcome that. That would be a wonderful opportunity, because anytime we've had that in town where there's been contested elections, that more people come out to vote in the town, and there's more debate, dialogue, discussion between the candidates and among the people in town. We are still lacking a third member. That's another
Yeah.
factor that we have to think about.
Yep.
That is a town of 700 people with not a huge population of parents and children or previous educators, et cetera, that might want to sit on a school committee. We have been without full representation anyway. So
Right.
those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Campbell, town clerk, assistant town clerk, chairman of the finance committee. In Northfield, every March, we have a nonpartisan caucus. And I've been doing those for at least 12 years. We have never failed to fill a seat, because people are there, they talk, they come, and they show their interest in that particular seat. If you put that kind of a thing out there for people, I think you're going to get more people that would be interested in it. You are face-to-face, you talk to these people and do it. Also, during that time, I've seen school committee, they don't know how to get on the ballot. They've come to me to get nomination papers, and they're not sure what to do. I have to explain it to them. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to run for office. So you have one member that is not filled, or one seat is not filled. Is that now filled by the select board? Because it would be a,
Appointed by the
yes.
appointed.
So you'd have to have a select board appoint somebody like that.
They're actually appointed by
Moderator.
the
No,
moderator.
no.
Moderator?
It's the moderator. It's the
in
moderator.
that town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like they do for the tech school. That's the same way they do it. But there should be an easier process if they're going to go
Yeah.
through that thing to understand how to get on the ballot and make it easier for them.
Yep.
The nonpartisan caucus is an hour meeting, coming, explaining what you wanted to do, and then getting a majority of the people that are there to vote you in. And if you don't get it and you still want to be on it, then you can get nomination papers. But it's an easier way to get on the ballot and get people to get take a seat that may not be filled.
Thank you.
Just remember that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Does anyone have any comments, school committee comments?
I'd say, for me, part of the point is voter turnout. The numbers of people who come to the November elections, and I know that there's been some comments about this being a false narrative, but this is not just this past November. The bar graphs indicate several November elections. For not all of us were elected this past November. So certainly the turnout is going to be much larger in a national election, but in the November elections, more people come out to vote than in the May elections. And in terms of representation or endorsement from the community, it's a greater opportunity. There are other issues at play, certainly getting people to step up, getting names on the ballot, and we've made an effort to share that information about how to get your name on the ballot, and we've also made an effort to share how the write-in process works. So I think that there are many pieces at play, but I think that having the numbers of voters who come out in November there's a greater number of our community members who come out to vote in November.
Yeah.
Um,
One second. Melissa was.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate your comments, and I used to live in Leiden, and I live in Northfield now. My name's Melissa. I was written in with 7 votes. And I do want to tell you, if someone comes to you in the future and says, I don't know how to get on the ballot, really, I put one flyer up at the IGA, and I just told all of my friends, I really want to get on the school board. And then I was, so it is unfortunate when people, maybe they just don't know how to get on the ballot, and then they just stop there, because really you only need a handful of write-in votes. So I'd encourage anyone if they're to go that route, if it's too late to get on the ballot and people come to you.
And that would also happen if you did it in your town annual election. You got to realize that we had 77% of our voting population voted in this last election, okay? I would say the least number of people to get votes were school committee. Yeah. So as far as your argument goes, I think you would be better served to get better people if you went through the annual elections.
Yeah.
Because they would be seriously thinking about what they wanted to do. And you probably would have got 40 or 50 votes, okay? So that whole argument of using the national election is just smoke screens, okay?
I think the idea too is that more,
No.
in my opinion, more people, it's on their mind, like, okay, this is the fall elections, you just see by nature of the numbers, more people are going to vote. And
This
so
is true, but their emphasis is going to be on the national election.
Yeah.
There less emphasis
Yeah.
on school committee members. In a lot of cases, they aren't seeing half the things are blank. So,
Yeah.
and unless somebody did some kind of a write-in and try to do that, but 6 votes,
Yeah.
to me, that's not a lot of representation. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
More than finance
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah.
Oh, because he's 0.
Yeah.
This is Catherine DiMatteo. I'd like to add that the town clerks have expressed a very strong opinion that it's a very difficult and time-consuming job for them to calculate the election of the school committee members from all the towns during a national election. And they expressed in an email exchange between them that their preference is that it would be done at the local election and not by all the towns.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. So number 2. Going along with school committee representation, we had quite kind of a 50-50 conversation about whether we should keep term limits or not have term limits within the district agreement. And what we ultimately decided on as a school committee was that we would go back and actually strike the language of term limits and remove that for a couple different reasons. And so that is what the decision was for number 2, was that we are striking the language that would put any limits on school committee members. Again, at the end of this district agreement, it does come up with having the district agreement revised and looked at every 5 years. And we hope that with the passage of a new district agreement, that section stays, so that in 5 years, let's say term limits are something that needs to be brought back up again, we have an avenue to go ahead and do that. But at this time, the school committee was feeling that having term limits written was not necessarily something we needed to have for the within the district agreement. Yeah, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Some of it was we don't even have spots that are filled yet, so we don't even have a full membership. One of them was the question about, so the serving members, if this was to get adopted, how does that, are you grandfathered in? Are you not grandfathered in? There really wasn't any clear guidance from that on whether that would take place. So those were 2 off the top of my head. Was there anything else I'm missing? Yep.
I know as a new member, I've benefited very much from having the members that are seasoned, that know, the process and that understand the work that has been going on long term. And I've really gotten a great perspective on that work that I don't think I would have been able to while I was trying to catch up on the process and also, look at the current business. So that was my thought on it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think one of the other questions, well, there were two points. One is that there aren't a lot of districts in the Commonwealth that have term limits for school committee members. So we didn't really have a lot of reference points for what other districts are doing. And I knew I'd lose my other point, so that's why I made that point first. The other point was that the grappling with, is 2 terms, what's the right number of terms? We'd have to make a decision about whether 2 is the right number, 3, how many terms, and we just didn't feel like it was something we needed to tackle at this point, partly because of, we're having difficulty filling all of the open seats anyway, so.
I just want to give you some of the reasons why we were supportive of term limits. And understanding
Excuse
that,
me,
yes,
who-
we don't have all the seats.
Who was supportive?
The
who-
three town group that was a town recommend, it was a.
No.
Was it? Anyway.
No.
Did
No.
I take that back then? It was discussed at that meeting, and
Okay.
I guess we weren't in agreement on it, but I wanted then just speak to some of the things that were said in favor of it, which is that despite the fact that you don't have people in all the seats, some of the reason, and this will be just my personal opinion here for that, is that there's no incentive for people to do that if people stay on a school committee forever. Because if there's people on school committees for a really long time, for someone else to say, oh, I think that would be something that I want to do, and have to make a commitment for 15, 20, 12, whatever number of years it is. And it's also would be somewhat discouraging if people, if the elections were contested and it was a current school committee member and you were a brand new person trying to get on, that you would be up against the incumbent.
Yeah.
So there's a number of those reasons. But another more important reason to me personally is that people get stale. They may get knowledgeable and they might have a lot of experience, but they get very stale and set in their ways and in their approaches and thinking about schools, school needs,
Yeah.
and if you don't force a time limit on the school committee member, don't have a term limit. It could be 3 terms, it could be 4 terms. I mean, it is a bit arbitrary. And you could say, well, they could have to be off for only a year, and then if they were willing to come back on, they could run in the next election. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it, and there's lots of ways to do the grandfathering, grandmothering, grandparenting, I should say, approach to get, people currently on. There's examples, hundreds of examples done by boards and school committees, I'm sure, all around that could be leaned on. So forgive me for representing this initially as a 3-town agreement, but it was definitely those kinds of arguments for the term limits that came up when we were having the discussions.
Totally. We had those discussions. I was a huge proponent of term limits. Like, I got on here and I made a public comment at the last school committee meeting that when I first moved here to Bernardston, I didn't understand why there wasn't term limits. And my thoughts have kind of changed, but we had discussed that as a committee. One of the things that I forgot to highlight that is really helpful as we're moving forward through this is the district agreement is numbered with the number that we're going through to help identify where we're talking about. So again, thank you, Patricia, for doing this.
I was showing different. I'm going to pull up the version with the number, so apologies for that.
So for number 3, there was a town suggestion to strike the word savings, and that was an easy school committee. We're like, yeah, great, okay, strike the word. Yep. So that was an easy school committee decision that we agreed on. So number 3, what it does is it just talks about the cost, the fiscal, so it's F1, 2, excuse me, fiscal analysis to determine the expected cost, and then we just got rid of savings. Number 4, the town suggestion was to increase the length of notice from 2 weeks to 30 days. The district will give before holding a public forum to discuss a possible closure of school. That was fine. Again, 15 was kind of an arbitrary number. There was feedback, and school committee easily said, sure, let's change that to 30 days. Number 5, town suggestion, closure of a school would require 2/3 majority vote by residents of the town in which the school is to be closed. The school committee decided to leave the draft as is, stating that the school committee would be the appropriate body to make the decisions about closing schools. That's number 5. Number 6, we held for tonight for further discussion. So number 6 is striking the requirement that at least one representative from each member town vote to support closure. And we had some questions about what the conversation was for striking that requirement. Why was that? So that would be directed, it was a town suggestion. So that was brought to us So I would say, I don't know if Jane has any comments since you identified yourself as the spokesperson.
Part of the discussion, Jane Dutcher, Town of Bernardston Finance Committee. Part of the discussion was that it was totally unfair to a school representative from Northfield to be forced to vote to close the Northfield Elementary School and then have to go back home and face townspeople. We felt that it was not necessary that there be somebody in the town voting,
Okay.
that we're not a big enough political entity for them to weather the storm that would
Okay.
happen if they voted to close the school and had to face all the parents who didn't want that to happen.
Okay.
So on that very low level, if you wish,
Yeah.
it's why we think it should not be in there.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a friendly group here.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking, so myself, when we were going over this with, in the subcommittee work, was that it actually makes it a higher, even a higher threshold to close that school, right? So that one member of that town would have to vote for that. So if it was Leiden, right, and Leiden did not want to close their school, then why should one of them have to vote to close the school? Because you're striking the requirement, right?
And I think that was your argument, right up until your conclusion, and then your conclusion went the other way.
I think that
Why should one person, why should one of you from any town that you represent have to vote to close the school in your town?
I think the idea is that, let's say 2 out of the 3 towns say, yes, that
Yeah.
town should have a closed school. It's kind of, in
Yeah.
my mind, it's unfair for that town, if all of the other school committee members from the other towns say, yes, we're going to close that school,
Right.
but the town itself doesn't agree with that. This is sort of a stopgap. So they would
Right.
have to have one person from the town of the school closing say,
Right.
yes, we agree with that. Do you know what I mean?
Because then that'd be really easy to close a school if everybody was like, okay, well, we're just closing Leiden, right?
You lost me.
So let's say
If I called for a vote to close PVRS, then the 3 representatives from PVRS would not vote at all because they don't want it to close. But you're saying one of them must vote to close it. So if nobody votes to close it, then it can't be closed.
right.
It's 2/3 plus one member from the town that's closing. So even if it's 2/3 and the 3 members from whichever, so Northfield or Bernardston right now,
they wouldn't be forced to close
Right.
it, but it's saying that at least one person. So
Right.
if Bernardston and Leiden said, we're going to close Northfield Elementary, and Northfield representatives said, I don't really feel comfortable with that. They didn't vote for it. If they said, no, we do not agree with that, then they wouldn't be able to just close Northfield because they wouldn't have at least one person of the 3 people from Leiden saying, yes, we agree with closing Northfield. You know?
It's in the instance of a 6-3 vote, right? So it has to be at least 7-2.
Yeah.
So it adds.
Suppose that the Northfield, or whatever town you want to pick, any town, really believe that they should close the school.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Then I'm wondering how that person is really going to vote.
Yeah.
I just,
Now,
I've-
do whatever you want to.
well, you know,
I think that the whole idea puts an onus on representatives that maybe isn't necessary.
okay. And is the contention with the word must as well? Because, you know, of course, they're going to vote however they felt compelled to vote based on the evidence. but thank you.
So this was one of the things that we had to discuss for tonight, to make a decision on how we wanted to amend it. So we can strike the requirement that at least one representative from each member of the town vote to support closure, or we can keep it how it's written, that a 2/3 majority of the committee with at least one representative from each member town voting to support closure, and then it goes on. Yes.
Sorry, here I'm back. I'm trying to get somebody else in my group to say something.
Good luck.
Because you didn't agree with number 5. Number 5 and number 6 sort of go together. Because you have 5, the closure of the school would require 2/3 majority vote by residents of the town in which the school is to be closed. That was our town, 3 towns.
That was the town.
Suggestion. So if the town voted, the town voted to close the school. If you had the support of the town to close the school, it wouldn't put pressure on the representative from the town, from each of the towns during this vote of the school committee. And so they're kind of linked together. I understand the points that you're bringing forward, that it would, it can work with the way Jane was describing it, or it can work the way that you were describing
Right.
it.
It can go either way. Right.
It does put a lot of pressure and power on the one person. Say you have 3 people, 2 don't support it, 1 does.
Yeah.
And that one person votes with the school committee
Yeah.
to close the school. The other 2 representatives, and from my understanding of boards, when a board makes a decision, you all stand behind the decision of the
Correct.
board. It doesn't become individual decisions.
Right.
But still, in terms of the 3 members that are representative, you might have 2 who are against, 1 who's for, and then it wouldn't be able to move forward unless one person voted, and that puts a lot of pressure
Totally.
on at least one person in that representative group. If they had the support of the town to close the school, and they were the town that was affected by it,
Yeah.
then it would be a much easier to leave that in there.
Right. Or the opposite, if the town is not supportive of that. Right.
Correct.
So I think what this is to try to really make it so it can't be 3 against 1 or 2 against 1 now. Right. That is really the goal here.
Well, yeah,
so
because you took away the other suggestion, it wouldn't be.
Yep,
It
correct.
would be much clearer if it wasn't. And you're speaking right now to the only town that actually had our school closed.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what that was like.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, we didn't have much say
Yep.
Right.
in it.
Yep. And you're
I mean,
talking
you
to
could
a school
understand
committee that many of us weren't here for that process, right? So there's lots of things. And so this is where we kind of have to make some decisions and then know that this is a living document that can be amended at minimally every 5 years. And so this is what we are, trying to figure out.
Right. Well, as long as I'm up here.
Well, hold on. We're not moving.
Brandon, yeah.
We have to finish 6, though.
I know, but just to say that 7
No.
also is
Could-
related to the same thing, and it's about, if the town wants to keep its own school open.
Right, but that's different than voting for. So we need to figure
No,
out.
I understand.
So you
that,
can
but
come
you
up
have
when
to
we're at
think
7
about
again.
it holistic-
So,
You have
yeah,
to think about the thing holistically.
yep,
Well,
yep, and we have, yes. Did you want to say something, Melissa? No, I thought I saw you. Okay. All right. Hi.
Ryan Herview,
Thank you.
Bernardston Select Board. On your chart
Yep.
there, number 5, it says closure
Oh,
of school.
are we on 5? Hold on, we're on 6.
I
But
know.
you want to go back
Get
to
to my
5?
point.
Okay, sorry.
It requires 2/3 majority vote by residents of the town in which the school is to be closed. And then number 6, strike requirement that at least one representative. And where on this form, where you
Yep.
have number 5 written,
Yep.
it does not mention that 2/3 of the town. It mentions 2/3 of the school committee. So which is it? Is my point. So
Right.
the town, because that should be in there. If 2/3 of the town,
No,
like on
no.
number 5.
We had decided, so on number 5,
So on number 5, it says 2/3 majority vote by residents of the town.
that was a town suggestion. The school committee did not make a decision to accept that decision.
It was
So
an
it doesn't-
addition that was
it was an
in the
addition.
draft.
That we did not move to accept. So we were not adding number 5, that the towns had a voice. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. So, oh, on 6? On 6? We could. Yeah. Is 6 feeling like something school committee we want to make a decision on now, or do we want to hold and come back to it later? You're not ready to make a decision. Okay. Okay. You want to hear 7? Okay. Did you by any chance watch our school committee meeting? You did. Okay, so you've heard all this. Okay. Okay. No, I was just wondering yeah. Yep. Okay. So we'll come back to 6. So number 7 is about adding new language to allow towns to override a school committee vote to close a school by holding a vote at town meeting. Town would be allowed to keep the school open, and district would bill the town for salaries and benefits. Administration spent some time, brought that back, DESI's guidance. They've had conversations with people who want to consider similar language. They've advised them to come back with a proposal, and no one ever has. So towns that have wanted to do that, DESI says, okay, put a proposal together, come back to us with it, and they haven't. So there's no blueprint per se of this ever happening, and DESI has never approved such language. So we talked about this again at the school committee meeting, and just the talk about trying to mathematically figure this out. The school committee decision was to leave the draft as is, and was not to add any language to allow the town to override a school committee vote to close a school. So that was number 7.
Last time we met, I said you should give me my own mic. Jane Dutcher, down at Bernardston. Why doesn't this district propose the blueprint to DESI? They said they haven't approved it because nobody ever came back with a formula for doing it. We've given you a formula for doing it.
Yep.
Submit it.
Yep. Jordan?
Yep. Well, I think in general, especially in matters of finance, I like to consider myself conservative. So I think that being the first one to do something is quite risky. And I think the actual calculation of doing it, it's easy to say, oh yeah, you just calculate it up. I mean, I don't know, a lot of these questions have taken a long time, but 40 minutes ago, there's the question that it's really hard to count votes sometimes when multiple towns vote. I would argue trying to calculate exactly the expenses that accrue to the individual school that you keep open might be even more difficult than counting votes from 3 towns. So I agree that some things are hard, and I think that this would be hard to the extent that it could lead to a situation where the regional school district ultimately is paying for expenses to keep the building open and not the actual town that they should be accruing to. I mean, it's creating this accounting nightmare And Desi was clear that, you know, no one else has done it because in practice, it's hard to execute. So when the organization that governs schools in the state says, this is really hard to actually do in practice, I take that as a strong suggestion not to do it.
Okay. That's number 7. Number 8, we received the town's suggestion about providing greater detail about condition of school before it returned to town. School committee decision was, okay, let's add greater detail as suggested. And so that was done. Number 9, town suggestion was to change the length of time that the district would pay 50% of fuel and electricity costs from 12 months, 1 year, to 3 years. Also to add the phrase, or the building is repurposed. Desi's guidance, there's no requirement that the district pay for fuel and electricity for any length of time, and providing 1 year was stretching it in their terms, and 3 years will not pass muster. So Desi would not approve that. So given that information from Desi, the school committee decided to leave the draft as is. Okay. Number 10, town suggestion was to add language in blue to the second sentence. After deducting the amount of state aid and general fund revenue the district is expected to receive and other general revenue as to include but not limited to tuition, charter reimbursement, retirement, bond earnings or investment, etc., the balance, school committee said, sure, let's add that language. Number 11, town suggestion was to change proposed budget dates so that the budget vote and notification to the towns will take place earlier. The change to the draft is as follows. School committee budget vote would be March 10th. Send assessments to town within 21 days, no later than March 31st. Send assessments to treasurers, select boards, and FinComs. So we agreed to update the draft as I just read, as recommended.
Dan Garland, Bernardston, got a couple questions. And this relates, I'm gonna call it 11A. It
11.
says the annual budget is adopted by 2/3 of the vote of full committee, must be approved at a member town meeting by a simple majority vote of 2/3 of the town members. I do believe that the towns wanted to see all towns vote for this, and the law states that we have the right to do that. Yes, it does. There's a statutory assessment method, and there is also an alternative statutory assessment method. And that's a state law, not a DESI law. So,
Well, we're not following where you are.
number 4, on number 11,
11-4. 11, the annual budget as adopted, okay. The annual budget as adopted by 2/3 of the vote with the full, must be approved by members. Okay,
and so I was just wondering why, I guess the school committee decided that they didn't want to listen to the towns on that one either. And the comment was made, I think, by Leiden, is that they're a small town, and they don't feel it's fair that the other 2 towns can just automatically vote and they don't have any say.
do you know what law that was, that it cited?
It's a Mass General law.
I know, do you know which one? I'm just curious.
It's also on the DESI website.
This is
and
number
you guys are so
23.
Okay, this is number 23. Thank you, Patricia.
Are you talking about the vote on the budget?
correct.
Okay.
It says budget right here.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
but could folks look at number 23 to see if we have this right? I thought that that was edit number 23.
Is it state?
Oh,
No,
Total assessment.
no, two separate things.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about, Stan, would come up in edit number, suggested edit number 23.
No, I'm talking about town voting on the
he's-
budget at the annual town meeting.
That's,
We're saying that we want all towns to
No.
have to vote yes, or otherwise it doesn't vote.
4.
Section 5.
You don't have to believe me.
Okay, yep, okay.
You can go and you can look it up. It's in writing, it's all over the place. And it's,
Saying that 2/3.
I don't have the number.
it says in Massachusetts, a regional school district budget must be approved by at least 2/3 of the local appropriate authorities, which are the town meetings. However, if the alternative method is used, all member towns must unanimously approve the budget. So it can be done. And the other thing, I just want to say,
Where are you reading from?
off the internet, off the,
No, I'm sorry. The document that you have is that.
when I pulled off the internet.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to follow you.
Mass General Law, just go look it up. You
have
Yeah.
don't have to believe
the-
me.
Can we just see so we can compare it?
Huh?
I'm looking at 23.
what law? We have the number and
I'm trying to
section.
understand what you're
here.
comparing.
B4 here.
Where's our? Is this?
Okay, so there's two different 2/3
Commonwealth of
happening.
Massachusetts Department of Education.
Can I see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
You
Tell
have a statutory assessment method, and you have an alternative assessment method.
I think, so, sorry, I'm gonna go back for a second, Stan, I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page. On page 5 of the draft, section 5, budget, B4 makes mention of, the budget must be approved at member town meetings by a simple majority vote of 2/3 of the member towns. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. If you go to page 8, edit number 23, it appears that the reference to the votes by 2/3 of the member towns is, exists in 2 locations in the draft. I just want to make sure we're all
Okay.
on the same page.
Well,
That's why there's some
that's something
confusion.
new.
Yes? Mike?
Yes.
Gretchen Kelton is nodding yes.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I didn't find the reference that you just made, and then you
Sure. The reference to,
can
the,
page and number.
my second reference was page 8. Yeah, not, paragraph G.
That's for the treasurer sending.
I'm just confused about what's the concern? So this says, the annual budget as adopted by a 2/3 vote of the full committee must be approved at member town meetings by a simple majority vote of 2/3 of the member towns. So what are you saying should be changed?
Right.
Should be all towns.
All towns.
Oh, by a
Right.
simple majority of, is this saying though that, I think this is.
He wants it to say all towns. So if we are going to pass a budget, right? Right now, how it's written is 2/3 of the towns have to pass it in order for the budget to be passed.
Okay.
What Stan is saying is that he would like it to read all towns. It has to be 100.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And you're voting
Right, all towns. So all towns need to vote to support it.
Now, there is a change, and I'm not, that you'd have to change from the statutory assessment method to the alternative assessment method. And that would require us to have to vote every year at the town meeting for the alternative assessment method, which would be nothing more than a boilerplate on the annual town meeting warrant. Just like we have now, we have 3 or 4 things that every year you just vote, and it goes through. It's just, what do they call it, housekeeping.
Oh, the fuck. Jordan.
That was my question.
Statutory, the
Yep.
thing about,
The other thing is, can I ask another question?
Is it for 11?
This process is gonna go to the town floor. This can be amended on the town floor, correct?
It cannot be amended on the town floor. That's not, well, that's
Why
not,
not?
I don't believe that's how it's written. I mean, we can look that up, but I don't believe that's
And
how,
there's no sense
Our-
of even bringing it to the townspeople. We might as well just say that the school committee and the schools have total control of the towns,
Well-
and we have no say. If that's
Well,
the case-
yeah, we can seek
If that's
legal,
the case, that's not the democratic process.
we'll have to look into that.
the select
I mean, that would be totally out of the picture.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the current district agreement and see how the current district agreement is written.
I don't know if an alternative method you can make that requirement. That wasn't Desi's guidance.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Right, right, right. Okay. You're welcome. Okay. Are we ready? Are we, yeah, ready to move on? Yes, okay. So, number 12, town suggestion to add date that annual reports are due to the towns. This took my brain a little time to wrap it around. So the committee shall honor before February 15th each year, submit an annual report of the district's prior fiscal year. So since town and district fiscal years run from July 1st to June 30th, administration would prefer to submit the annual town reports by September 1st. So if it runs from July 1st to June 30th, then within a couple months, then, within 2 months, then we would submit the annual reports. Leiden just recently changed their town report requirements to follow fiscal year calendar. So we have different towns with different reporting and when to report and when to do that. So what we looked at was, and what we had decided is to add a due date of September 1st for the town reports.
I don't think any of the towns would have a problem with receiving the report earlier and
Okay.
saving it for the annual report where it has to be printed.
Okay.
What I want
Great.
to
Great.
reiterate or point out is that this annual report is not just a fiscal report. It should include, and has historically included, comments on the educational process, comments on how the elementary schools are doing. Usually there's a statement from the principals of the elementary schools. I wish I'd gotten the town report out to read several of these over the years. But it's not just a fiscal report, FISCAL report. It is a report of the whole process of what's going on so that the townspeople can understand the district.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
And this statement here made me think that you were misinterpreting it as being.
Nope. Not at all. Nope. 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 Okay. Yeah. Annual. Yeah. Yep. Annual reports. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's right.
Yep. It's a school committee report. Correct.
Yep.
It's a school.
And MGL at that, I'm looking for the citation, sorry. The Mass General Laws, Michelle, do you remember the citation? I didn't put the citation in this.
I look at them every day.
Oh, I have it in my email. Yeah, I'd have to look it up.
So, Jane, the statute that requires the annual report of the school committee to the towns has specific requirements for the report. The town reports that we have sent in the past few years and the ones I've seen prior far exceed what is in the statute. But I do want to make clear, the statute requires this much. We provide.
We do this much. Right.
Just to clarify.
So
Yep.
we should clarify that in the district agreement then, because I think the towns expect to hear more than that.
Leiden gave us a
Mark,
temp.
would you please send me the requirements so I can read
Yep.
them? Thank you. I'll share them with you.
Okay.
Yeah, Leiden had a nice template that they shared with us that,
Pretty simple.
yeah, that we used for this last report.
Number 13 was a town suggestion, district discussion. In the definition of capital costs, include an excess of 5,000 and language about purchasing equipment. Strike the word extraordinary. We decided to update the draft as indicated. Strike the word extraordinary. Yep.
And I think the towns had initially wanted $10,000 in the draft that they, the draft edit.
Number 14.
13. Oh, sorry, I went ahead, go ahead.
So number 14.
Yes, sorry.
Number 14, town suggestion. Add language, the district shall identify and recommend to the member town capital projects in excess of 10,000 for PVRS, so the member towns can include these capital costs as separate articles in their annual town meeting warrant, excuse me. DESI guidance, state law does not permit proposed edits, which confirms that towns should not have a separate vote for capital costs at Pioneer. So our vote was to leave the draft as is. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, Brian, for you.
It's okay.
We'd been voting capital costs separately for quite a number of years now, without objection from the state when we send our paperwork in. This was our town meeting, so on and so forth. And there was no objection by anyone. Nobody said anything that we couldn't do that. Of course, I tried to look up CMR at 4105-1A.
Yeah.
And as it was the last time we met here discussing this, the website is under maintenance.
Oh, no. Oh,
Maintenance. Every single time. I know it's not your fault.
No, I know. Yeah, I know.
So I couldn't read the language.
Okay.
yeah, well,
Okay.
But we had been doing that the whole time, so
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So I know that the elementary schools are voted separately for the capital costs, but we're talking, this one talks specifically about Pioneer.
Yeah. That was, yeah,
Always have. Nobody's ever objected. Nobody
Yeah.
said we couldn't.
yeah.
I don't know.
Don't forget the,
Brian?
don't forget the.
Use the mic.
Oh, sorry,
please.
thank you. At the school committee meeting last week, I actually have the citation here. The guidance that the Bernardston Finance Committee posts on its own webpage concurs with the school committee's decision. There is a Finance Committee handbook produced by the State Association of Finance Committees, and I provided several citations last week where it very clearly says it needs to be a single vote. And that's on the Finance Committee's webpage. And this is the citation. Let's see, what is it? 41. Tell me what I'm looking at.
41.5,
05.
1A.
1A.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this it's working again. There you go. So if you want to bedtime reading, go home and CMR is up.
Number 15, return to having the district ask towns to put capital projects on town warrants. School committee decided that they're the best body to be positioned to determine capital projects and needed to operate the schools. And so the school committee decision was to leave the draft as is. We could get you a rolly chair.
So you're telling me that if the Bernardston wants to invest in our elementary school, we are not allowed to do it. But if you want to invest in our elementary school, we can pay for it, whether we like it or not.
Jordan?
I don't know if I'd say it quite like that. I think that probably a different way to say it would be when the school committee hires administrators like the superintendent, director of finance, and when those administrators then hire principals and teachers, we take their recommendations seriously about what's best for students, only because they have specific degrees and experience to determine what's best for students, right? I mean, we entrust them every day with what's best for students. So I think when thinking about capital projects, it really is staying with that same thing. I think people who have specific professional expertise, knowledge, experience, work with the students every day should be thinking about what is going to be best for the safety, well-being, and education of the students. Now, ultimately, that doesn't mean anybody's ramming it down anyone's throat. I mean, it goes to town meeting, and every single person in every single member town can vote on the budget. So
if you decide that Bernardston needs a new roof, you can put that I'm going to guess $230,000 expense.
I think that'd be a deal in a way.
Well, I know what it cost the last time, and that was 10 years ago, so I don't think my 230 is too high. It's probably low.
Right.
So you would put that in for Bernard, in Bernardston's assessment to be paid. And we could either vote to pay it.
Correct.
We wouldn't be able to go for a Prop 2.5 override. We wouldn't be able to seek any different funding for it because it would be part of the budget. So you're cutting off services that the town would be able to provide in other areas of the town to put a new school roof on, regardless of the consequences. You wouldn't consult us, you would just put it in the budget. And we could either vote it up or down.
Oh, I don't think there's any intent to say that people wouldn't consult with one another. I mean, I think that that's...
If it's not billed separately, we can't handle it separately.
But that doesn't eliminate the possibility of consultation. And additionally, I think it also creates, as you're talking about, a pressure to keep overall assessments down, including capital costs. Because right now, you're right, they're two separate pots. So this would actually create a fiscal incentive for the district to find, potentially
Well, you're
have to...
also talking about building a new building over here to the tune of, what, $50 million expense to the towns?
And then this
And with
conversation
this
would be moot.
language, you would be able to put that into the operating expense, too.
Well, I mean,
All
with this,
capital
I mean,
costs.
it would no longer be a town
We
building.
can argue all we want, but the language needs to handle it.
Mhm.
That's my point.
Yeah.
And to say that capital is going to be handled this way is not productive. It's not productive for the towns, it's not productive for the district, because with those kinds of numbers going into the operating budget, the budget's going to get voted down because we don't have the money. Or it's going to be voted subject to 2.5 override. How often do you think 2.5 overrides pass? I don't remember one ever passing. We do exemptions for them, but we don't do overrides. So please
Yep.
think about that language and
And-
think about the aspects from the town's perspective,
Sure.
not just the districts. This has to be a cooperative document that helps all four entities, the three towns and the school district. And when we read through here, there are so many places where the towns just weren't considered, and this is one of them. Please, please, let's cooperate.
So I just have to say, I would disagree with that, because if you look through this document, each number goes through whether it was a town suggestion or a district suggestion. And there has been multiple that we've gone through tonight that have been town suggestions, town suggestions, town suggestions. So there has been collaboration. There has been. Okay. So number 16, section,
Dan,
Five,
guy on
15.
Oh.
Bernardston.
Oh, Stan.
Stan.
Folks have obviously done a lot of work, but the way I see this meeting going tonight, it's going nowhere. There's a lot of tension here. Still, people don't like a lot of stuff that's written in here. So maybe, just maybe, it's time to say, okay, let's bring Desi to the table. Let's put him right out here in front of us, and let us all discuss this with Desi. We'll give him our language, the way we say it. You can say it the way you say it, but they're gonna hear it from both ends. And then we'll get the right answer. You're guessing, maybe we're guessing.
No, there's no guessing. I cannot tell you the hours of,
But I just think it would be better
Desi.
if we,
okay,
if you guys would just get Desi involved, have it.
yeah.
I, with all respect, I do think what I heard in the last meeting, which was hours and hours, is that there have been extensive conversations with Desi
Yes.
about every single point
Yes.
that is in this. So
Not
we,
from the towns.
the town submitted their
Yes.
recommendations, which was brought to Desi, and they provided feedback.
Hearing it from the towns and hearing it out of our mouths, the way we say it to them, is different than what you're gonna say it.
No, okay.
So that's
Yep.
all I'm saying.
Thank you.
I'm trying to have a big argument about it, but I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I see it. Can you just state your name, please?
Lisa Robinson,
Okay.
Chair of Leiden Finance Committee. Did Desi, okay, my first question real quick is, did Desi also give guidance about 14 and 15, or just 14?
14.
I'm gonna, oh, sorry. Both.
Okay.
And Jordan, and you know, correct me if you think I'm portraying this incorrectly. I'm going to say that the whole question of the capital projects, the capital projects at PVRS versus capital projects at the town-owned schools was talked about in a dozen conversations with Desi.
I don't understand. I mean, Jane knows a lot more than me. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't understand. So we have no capital costs at all in our budgets. Our town operating budget, we have zero capital costs from any department. That's the way that we do ours. And then we do our capital costs separately with everything. So if we end up with a capital cost, let's say, whatever, 100 grand, pick a number, this is going to fluctuate our tax rate, and it will fluctuate. Like we try to keep the operating budget and the tax rate not flat, but not up and down like this.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't be able to fund a capital project with, say, free cash, general stabilization, if it's wrapped into the operating budget of the school. So how would you borrow money on it? If you needed to borrow money, if you had to do a 2.5 override? It doesn't allow for any of the way that the towns use to pay for our capital projects. This language does not allow us to do that, unless I'm missing something, but.
No, you're saying it better than I can.
Okay.
So there's something, there's gotta be something.
I don't see how that would.
There must be
Because they're
some
saying they
confusion
pay for
here,
it separately.
because it's not the way the town.
Separating the two assessments that she's having contention with. I would say it would be more the fact that if the towns pay for them, it's not part of the school budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that provides them greater financial.
Dan Campbell.
Okay.
I've been on the Finance Committee for 20 years. We've had separate capital projects from the schools, all the schools. There's not been one, if it's justified, that we have not passed. So I don't understand the whole rationale about this. If you have something above and beyond that you need payment for, or you need, and you present it to the finance committees, or you present it to the towns, I don't think any town would vote that down. But it has to be justified. When I have people come in front of me for finance committee, if they can justify their budgets, then that's fine. They have to show me why they need this, and if they need it, that's fine. We will justify it. We will recommend it. But if we see something that we don't have the information, it's very hard for us to justify or say that we support anything. I think what's happening here is we want to work with you, but it seems like we're becoming adversaries here. And I know that, I have teaching background. I was a school teacher for years. And I know how hard it is to be a teacher and everything that goes into teaching. And so as far as teaching goes, I would give everything to the kids, without a doubt. But I also have a responsibility to the taxpayers of the town of Northfield. Every day I have taxpayers telling me they're paying too much in taxes, paying too much in taxes. The biggest draw for the town of Northfield is the school. We pay 54 to 59% of our total budget goes to the school. The only thing that we could do is say, we're not going to support it. And I think that if we don't come to some kind of a understanding and work together, then we're going to get into that point where come town meeting time, the finance committee and the select board is going to say, we do not recommend this to happen. I don't want to get there. I want to work together. And I think when you're talking about capital things, I don't see what the reason is if you have a project that is above and beyond your budget or above and beyond that year's budget, and if you can justify it, it will happen. Guaranteed. You know, the school, this is a $22 million school. I was a chairman of the building committee for this school. And this thing is, 25 years old now? It's amazing. But we were able to come together to build this on time, on budget, because the towns were supportive of it. If the towns are not supportive of this, you're not going to get it.
So are you saying it's a courtesy, almost, it's a courtesy in a partnership that you're asking for the towns to bring it to the towns first, for the towns in the town warrant to say, yes, we support this, and then we would.
Well, we want, if you have a capital project, yes, separate it out from your total budget. Why is that a problem? I don't see it as a problem. You need more technology, and you rationalize that. That's pretty easy to say, yes, we see the need for that, and we will support that.
Yeah.
I cannot understand why there's this pushback on that. I really can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Great.
Anything else? Okay.
I'm Gail Weiss. I'm on the FinCom in Northfield, but I'm also the accountant for Pelham and Shutesbury in the Amherst-Pelham Regional School District. And I do know when they have large capital projects, they borrow every so often. And what they do is they come to the four towns, anything in the middle school and the high school, because we all don't have our own schools. What they do is they come to each select board. There is some sort of procedure. And in order to continue that debt or whatever, the select board either votes to support it or they put it out on the town meeting warrant. And because we have this continuous debt, the schools learn to keep it relatively stable for the towns. And it was done on an override at some point, I can't remember. But, that would be a lot more cooperative than just saying, well, we're just gonna add it on and you're gonna pay for it.
Okay. Number 16. So the district had a suggestion to add 2 new subsections. So the first one, number 3, if the cost of the capital project is ultimately less than the capital assessment for that project, the district will refund the difference at the latest within 60 days of receiving the Division of Local Services certification of excess and deficiency letter in the year following the fiscal year during which the capital project occurred. And 4, if the cost of the capital project is ultimately more than the capital assessment for that project, the district will assess the member towns the difference in the year following the fiscal year during which the capital project occurred, based on the method described in subsection B2 of this section. So that was brought to us for the purpose to clarify the district would refund for capital projects only at town-owned buildings. District already has a mechanism for refunding at Pioneer, PVRS, only when capital project contributes to the overall E&D in excess of the 5% threshold. Purpose is also to create a mechanism for district to assess for capital projects at town-owned buildings if cost of project is greater than original assessment for the project. And the school committee voted to add both of the new subsections. Jordan, could you explain?
So really, it was just to separate out how things would work between the difference between the PVRS building and the town-owned building. So with PVRS, if a capital project is either higher or lower than originally budgeted, there's no impact. Oh, there you go. No, I'm with you.
Don't
I'm
we
with you. Great point. So if it's lower, for example, there's already a mechanism, to refund that money to the towns in proportion of their assessments, right, through E&D, right? So once, for example, if the project's $50,000 less at the end of the year, that $50,000 closes to E&D and it adds to the balance, and if that exceeds 5%, the balance is refunded to the towns. Wait, hang on, Jane. Everybody's going to lose their place. This is in-depth stuff. I've seen people losing their places, and I'm trying to prevent that. So the whereas in the town buildings, well, hang on, I'm going to finish, and then we can hear your holiday greetings. With the town buildings, it'd be different, right? Because in this example, we're talking about assessing capital projects in the town buildings. So in that circumstance, if a project, to Brian's point, was lower, the towns don't want that going to E&D because E&D is shared by all three towns. They want their money back, right? So for example, if it's in Bernardston Elementary, we're not going to be doing a roof. Don't get scared. But say, for example, a mini split project, let's go something a little smaller scale, was budgeted for $40,000. We get some great rebates. I'm using an example that might have happened. And ultimately the project only cost $20,000. Now the town of Bernardston, that $20,000 goes right back to them because that was only assessed to the town of Bernardston. The other two towns have no ownership of that additional $20,000. That needs to be refunded, right? And so we only need a mechanism for refunding on town-owned capital projects if in fact we were assessing for those projects. In the instance of it being higher, same idea, right? So the project we thought was going to be $40,000, unfortunately it's $45,000. Well, the reason you'd need to have a supplemental assessment to get up to $45,000 is the other two towns aren't interested in us using district money to pay for a capital project in a building that is only owned by the single town. So that's why we were saying, actually, for those points, 3 and 4, we only need them in the instance where we are assessing for capital projects in town-owned buildings. For the PVRS building, we already assessed for it. We already have mechanisms. Nothing different is needed to be done, right? PVRS, if it costs more, what do we do? Well, we're going to need to do a budget transfer. We're going to need to use a revolving fund as an offset. We're going to need to use rural aid, right? We're going to have to figure it out ourselves. We can't go back to the towns and assess again, right? So we need to figure that out in our own budgeting and use our own funding sources. And that's fair because those funding sources are owned by the three towns and the project would be in a building owned collectively by the three towns. So that's why we thought we should stipulate in town-owned buildings. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. 17 for town suggestion. Yep.
I think we have to go back to the drawing board with this whole capital, because if the towns are going to be assessed separately for capital expense, then some of this language that we just discussed needs to be changed to agree with that procedure. As far as capital costs go for the elementary schools, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but those capital expenditures were recommended to the towns, and I don't remember ever not putting one on the warrant in the past. Yeah, I don't remember. So capital expenditures for BES were separate articles on the annual town warrant, and were generally always approved by the annual town meeting. Now, if we approve, and this goes not just for capital costs, but for any other specific expenditure, if we approve $10,000 to buy bingo cards, and the bingo cards come in, the bids come in, and the lowest cost is $12,000, then we cannot go forward with that purchase until we have another town meeting to approve more money to get up to the $12,000. Because town meeting has appropriated a specific amount of money for a specific project, and nobody has the authority to override that. You need to go back to town meeting for another vote. So when you say if a capital expense is more, you'll just bill it the next year, I don't think you can do that. So that's why I think the whole question of capital needs to start over.
Okay. So number 17, town suggestion to strike manage and pay and substitute with notify and coordinate with member towns. Strike all of second sentence and items 1 and 2. The proposed edits are part of a larger suggestion. This is school committee's response. Proposed edits are part of a larger suggestion that the district neither assess for nor run capital projects in the elementary schools. Current draft provides clear mechanism for assessing towns for capital projects in the town-owned schools. If town residents don't want to support a capital project, they are able to vote down the district budget at town meetings. Recommended language provides district with strong incentive to work with the towns before submitting the budget for a vote at town meetings. And so our decision was to leave the draft as is. (18) District suggestion, delete from 2. Reference was incorrect. Should only be B2, so we deleted the incorrect reference. Number 19 was to delete completely. If the change is made in section 6, B2, to add subsections 3 and 4, then section 6B5 no longer is needed. And so we opted to do that. So deleted completely. 20 was a town suggestion. Strike second paragraph and 3 bullet points from subsection D. The response was the 3 bullet points are necessary to clarify the language of the subsection. Recommend to change to section 5B1 addresses this concern. So to leave the draft as is. 21, town suggestion, include net of the state reimbursement for prior year transportation expenses. So we decided to update the draft as indicated. So we agreed. 22 was a town suggestion. Add capital costs should be assessed separately. CMR response is CMR 41.05. 1A confirms that towns should not have separate votes for capital costs. So the school committee's decision was to leave as is. Yes, that's why I looked up at you. Number 23 was a town suggestion. Change the end of the last line of the paragraph from 2/3 of the member towns to all member towns. Response, state law does not permit district agreement to require a threshold of unanimous vote by towns on regional school budget. MGL Chapter 71, Section 16B. So the decision was to leave the draft as is. Number 24, town suggestion, strike language that would allow the school committee to incur debt under MGL Chapter 71, Section 16D. DESI's guidance was that towns may not take away the authority provided to the school committee by MGL Chapter 71, Section 16D. So our decision was to leave the draft as is. 25 was a town suggestion. In the first line, change the to all when a majority of all member towns. This change would just be inconsistent with references to majority votes in other sections. So leaving the draft as is. Number 26 was a town suggestion. Require a unanimous vote of member towns, not 2/3 of member towns, to allow a new town to join the district. The response was requiring a unanimous vote would be inconsistent with other vote thresholds. And so the school committee decided to leave the draft as is and keep it 2/3. Number 27 was a town suggestion, add towns as bodies to the Regional Agreement Advisory Committee reports to. The school committee is a duly elected body charged with operating the public school district. Also, the REAC includes one representative from each town to be appointed by the select boards, along with one school committee member from each town. Our decision at the last school committee meeting was to leave the draft as is. Yep.
Catherine DiMatteo. All the town was asking for is a report to the town. We understand we'll have a representative on the committee, but why is it that that report would not be sent to the towns? It doesn't seem like a big ask to me. It seems like you're doing this, it's to be transparent, or I hope, to have some, review and transparency to the whole thing. Why would it not come to the town? Sent to the select board or the finance committees? That's all we're asking for, that they report back to us. I don't know why that's something that would not be considered.
Yeah, I hear that. I want to read out loud the because the language wasn't quite as clear to us as what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I want to read the edit that was recommended by the towns. So I'm in section 11, paragraph A, about halfway.
Go ahead.
Okay. At 5-year intervals, establish a regional agreement advisory committee, hereinafter referred to as RAAC, to study this agreement and report to the committee, and here's the edit, and member towns shall give any such report due consideration as to whether or not any changes to this. That it wasn't clear to us that that edit meant what you are saying right now.
Well, if it's this report's given to us, and again, one would expect that we could come and comment on it. Would you have your school committee? Would you talk about what the advisory committee reported to you? And if we didn't see it in advance, we couldn't even as the public, as public citizens, be able to give it consideration. So we want the report to come to us so that we can be prepared to respond. And to be informed and to respond if necessary. I mean, doesn't mean that we would. We would.
Right. Let me see this.
Because once again, we're going through all of this now. If this advisory committee has a report, wouldn't it be wise for us to all consider what the committee has to say before we get into another 5-year go-around, or minimum 5-year go-around, or maximum of 5-year go-around on this review of this district agreement? I don't understand where we're not taking any authority away from the school committee. We're just
I guess my thought process with this, and this is just me, is that when the committee is composed, then there's one representative from each member town to be appointed, that they would be communicating back with the town. Like, no, I'm just saying, like, that's
That's the goal.
that, like, that would be the goal, right? And so, right, like, it would be up, that
Well,
would be
it
the
could
select boards,
then it could
right?
be written in here that the representative from the advisory committee consults with the town.
So I have a question.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I don't-
that's a huge assumption.
So I'm trying to just understand, so to establish a regional agreement advisory committee, so the regional agreement advisory committee established would be in collaboration with
Yep.
the town. So that is the goal that this is saying, I think.
Right.
Which I agree with, but why would we not see the report?
But they want to get specific, like a report that the RAC would report directly.
Right.
Well,
And
not
so
addressed
this,
to us.
so I'm new to this committee, but
Yeah.
in the last 2 meetings, this agreement was here and anyone could have seen it at that time.
Right.
So I'm trying to understand, you guys you're saying you'd like a copy of this sort of sent ahead of time?
Well, the advisory committee's report.
Yeah.
And you're volunteers. We're all probably volunteers in this room. There's a difference to me, now this is going to be a personal comment. There's a difference to me if I get an email directly, I will look at it. If it's posted on the school committee's website and I then have to get your newsletter and then I have to go to the website and then I have to read that the report is there, I may not get to it. It may not come to my attention in the same way. So,
Totally.
and I'm talking as a person who's not working full-time. So anybody who
Right.
would be working full-time,
I hear
even
that.
more difficult to pay attention to where a communication is in multiple layers. We just, I mean, I don't understand the difficulty of finding language that there would be a direct communication to the towns that the committee has finished their report and this is what it looks like.
Well, I think what you said tonight is different than what it sounded like. I think are two different things, and I think reporting to, right, has a different connotation, right, than what you're suggesting, right? What you're suggesting is that there's this collaborative, there's information sharing, there is, right, which is what in essence we're all trying to do here. And so, but that it was not the language, and that was not, I don't think it encompassed the essence of what you're saying, right? So if that
I have a
is,
suggested edit.
you have
I have a suggested edit. If folks
Here.
would look at that paragraph, please, just trying something out. The last paragraph begins with the committee. What if prior to that paragraph it said, that sentence, so the prior sentence, to study this agreement and report to the committee as to whether or not any changes to this agreement might be beneficial. What about something like, the RAAC will make its report available to town select boards, period. The committee, which refers to the school committee, how would that, there's a sentence saying the RAAC will make its report, will send its report to the town select boards.
Well, can't speak for everyone, so.
I see some nodding with that.
I know.
Okay.
Right, and can I point out that is actually a great example, Patricia, of a collaborative discussion. And not that, oh, that's not the way I read it. That wasn't what I thought you meant. But the way to say, oh, let's find a solution, which is what I was also saying, where we can find language to make it meet both of our ends.
well, Yes,
And
and
that's the same with almost all of our suggestions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to say something at this point. You know, collaboration can take many forms.
Yeah.
We all know that. There are groups that collaborate more easily than other groups. In the end, the Warwick Transition Group, composed of folks from school committee, administration, Warwick, worked exceedingly well. I want the folks in this room to understand how hard school committee members, Kath, I would like to say this. There are different ways of honoring people's opinions. This document with 28 edits represents a lot of hard and effective work to pay careful attention to every single edit. Catherine, you're shaking your head. It's hard to say what I'm saying when it feels like someone is shaking their head and dismissing what I'm saying in the moment. Again, collaboration can take many forms. We worked hard to think about the edits, to seek guidance on the edits, to do research on the edits, and to make recommendations to school committee. School committee considered things. Because it didn't happen in person doesn't mean it wasn't collaborative. And the behavior of some participants at the last public forum wasn't particularly collaborative. So again, collaboration can take different forms, and I believe that what we've presented to you tonight represents one way of collaborating. And thank you for the kind words about what we just solved right now.
Yes, and I would say that the respect has to go both ways. There is also a lot of work, and I don't think, again, I can only speak for myself. I never doubted that a lot of work has gone into this by the administration, by the members of the school committee. I do not doubt that one bit. I honor that you're willing and able to do that. On the other hand, we are also spending a lot of time on our side. And we are also doing a lot of research, and meeting, and we want, our intentions are to share and to be participants in the outcome of this district agreement. And so sometimes, yes, collaboration is done many ways. You could all be back and forth on paper or, electronically in Google Docs or some other form. Or it could be done the way we're doing it now with having separate meetings and then meetings together, which I actually don't feel as effective. That's, again, a personal opinion. But I don't want you to doubt our intentions for the towns. The towns have to think about what also works for the town and our citizens. I know your number one priority are the citizens of the school, and those are our citizens too. But there's a larger, more complex environment that we have to operate in, and so we're trying to bring a perspective from our town experience to come up with the best possible agreement that meets requirements, laws, recommendations from DESE, what towns want, impacts on our town, and then the best for the school. So, coming together here the tension shouldn't be there here, but it is. But solving problems together is what I would expect that we could do, just as we've just done with this last one. And I also want to appreciate the places where you did accept the recommendations or suggestions that were made by the town. There are a number of key issues, that we're still a little at odds about. And we should try to figure out a way to bridge whatever gaps we have on on the remaining issues. That maybe it's not, in a slightly different forum, a different way of collaborating than we've had so far. So I thank you.
And the last one, 28, had to do with removing the special funds paragraph. The question from the towns was, why was this removed? In part, one, it's because it would lead possibly to inequities amongst the towns. And Bernardston's the only one that has an account. There's no money in it, and the other two towns do not have special funds accounts. So,
I think you misinterpreted that paragraph. The special funds that they're talking about in the current district agreement are trust funds. And trust funds are funds that usually have been left by a resident in their will to be used however they've specified. And I know Northfield has a trust fund that specifies that they use that money for students in Northfield Elementary School. And I know in the past they have done programs for that school. And it was approved by the then school committee. And Bernardston has no fund, so I don't know what fund you're talking about here.
yeah, it was something, was it Michelle? Jennifer Coffin. Jennifer Coffin reached out to Bernardston and talked to Karen about it.
I don't know know what account they're talking about. They misunderstood each other because we don't have any account like that.
Okay, so then is that entire paragraph that is in the original district agreement wrong?
No, what's in the original district agreement is fine. The school committee shall not interfere with the town's use of trust funds or any other special funds, including separate town meeting articles intended for the enhancement of the educational opportunities for that town's children.
That's exactly what you did.
The operating budget shall not be altered by the expenditure of such funds. That's the paragraph that you eliminated.
Okay.
But
And
I just came to the table to say that sentence about Bernardston is incorrect.
Okay, then thank you for correcting that. Okay.
And I think that paragraph should be back in the warrant. I'm speaking for myself.
Yep.
Should be back in the district agreement because I know that Northfield has a trust fund that has that specificity. Maybe they've used the fund up and it's not.
So is that special funds then? But
Sometimes
that's what was
they're-
deleted.
Sometimes
That was
the
the
trust
whole
funds
thing was
have to
deleted.
build
There
up
was a lot
enough
of conversation
income
Right.
to
thinking that it
be able
would
to do
create
anything.
inequities.
And
Yeah.
that could be the case.
Yeah, okay.
with the Northfield Trust Fund.
Yeah, and I think the discussion amongst the subcommittee that I was on was to remove that so it would prevent inequities. So that, let's say there was a trust fund and I pass away, my life insurance goes to Bernardston schools for $1 million, and I want all of the students in Bernardston to get A, B, C, and D, right? So that means those students in Bernardston, because of my policy that I left, would be allowed to have that. The subcommittee response to that would be, that's inequitable, and we don't agree with
but I
that,
think,
that belief.
I'm trying to read where this came in. I know in the past when Northfield wanted to expend money on something for their students, let's say it was a trip to the zoo, I don't know. And they came before the school committee and said, this is what we want to do, and it got approved.
Jane,
And
that
it could just as well have been denied. It would depend what a group wanted to do, or what, the controlling entity of that trust wanted to do with the funds.
The school committee's current policy, gifts to the schools, allows, well, first of all, that policy requires that the school committee accept any gift to the school schools, and that school committee make a decision about how the gift will be spent. So, Mrs. Gary might decide to leave $1 million to the district and say, I want every student to have gold-tipped pencils. That's my legacy. I'm leaving that. Yes, Brian is excited about that.
Ticonderoga, actually.
It's a straight gift. It's not going through a special fund. It's a straight gift to the schools. The current policy requires that school committee vote to accept that gift. The school committee does, if the school committee accepts it, they also have to vote how it will be spent. Now, I don't want to get into if the will says, I'm going to pull the money if you don't spend it. The school committee could choose to take that gift and spend it on books. So that's the policy around gifts to the schools, which is distinct from the language in the current district agreement about special funds. So we do gratefully accept gifts from the Kiwanis, for instance. They are very generous to the schools. A check comes in, it comes to school committee votes on it and approves the expenditure. That wouldn't stop.
But I'm not talking about trusts that are left for the benefit of the school. I'm talking about trusts that are given to the towns with provisions within them that the money be used in the schools. Or often it says the specific school.
Yeah, right. And in our conversation,
think about whether we need this paragraph in the
right,
document.
right.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say that Leiden has a Quintus Allen Fund for, it was supposed to be for the children in their elementary school, and we still have the Quintus Allen Fund because we don't have an elementary school. But we could give it to the children of Leiden if we wanted to, out of school.
Out of school.
So
Yeah.
Out of school. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, we've gone through all 28 suggested edits. The only one that we still have hanging over our heads is number 6, on whether we want to strike the requirement that at least one representative from each member town vote to support closure, or not. And I don't know if anyone has any strong feelings one way or the other. I can see it going either way myself. So I honestly don't have, hearing from the towns that their suggestion is to strike it. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. Michelle, no? You don't either?
I mean, I think at one point, don't forget, this was as a result of bad feelings.
Right.
It was a result of being $500 to $1 million in the negative. It was a result of people being on the school committee for 30 plus years. It was a result of many different things when it was first started in 2017. And this is now 2024. A lot has changed. And I do like that in a future one, that a representative from the town, from each member town will be appointed by the respective select boards. That is more of a collaborative approach to doing this. And I think after going through this process, people have different questions. There should be more listening and accepting, and I think we can go forward with a better document than what we would have passed in 2017. But then we would have been 5 years later. So
right, here we are.
Updated it.
Right.
And that's the process. But as far as number 6 goes, I could vote either way.
I could too.
I'm not hung to it when it, like when we first talked about it, because that was a lot of bad feelings for people when
Right.
the schools got.
Right. That's my fear, right? My fear is that there could possibly be a school closure and there's no voice from anyone, you know, because they don't have to vote one way or the other. I understand the pressures and everything, right? But to just say that no one had a voice in it, yeah.
Well, I would hope if a school was going to close, that there would be collaboration from the school committee with the towns to be discussing it prior to a vote. I'm hoping that it wouldn't get that way.
Well,
to that,
Michelle, you
but-
chaired the committee that wrote a whole brand-new section on closure of a school that mapped out a very extensive process.
Right, and
Right.
we did it because of
Yes.
Warwick and Leiden.
Yeah, I
That's
just
what
want to
I'm
say,
saying.
we're hoping,
Yeah.
you chaired the committee that wrote a
Right.
very good section about
Yeah.
making sure there were guardrails, timelines,
There-
protections for the
Yeah.
towns. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so before that vote takes place, there will be a whole process that didn't happen in the
Right.
past. And
But
Yeah,
for number
no, I think
6,
that's-
as far as the vote, it's not as passionate to
Yeah.
me as it was.
As it was,
Yeah.
right? Stephanie?
That's what I'll say.
Pardon me. You make a very good point that this is a town suggestion.
Yeah.
And here we are looking to protect the interests of the towns in this process and hoping that no one would be, I guess, pushed forward by a majority that they weren't agreeing with. Because it's a town suggestion, and you just made that point, I mean, it certainly makes me lean towards that. Yeah.
Towards strike, okay.
Striking?
Strike,
Yeah.
striking, striking, okay. So strike, yep, so please edit it to
Yep,
strike the
edit it.
requirement that at least one representative from each member town to vote for the closure, okay. See, we go back and forth, term limits, striking,
Strike requirement.
5 years from now, we get to
Yeah. Talk about it all over again.
do it again. Okay, so is there any other further discussion?
I just
So-
want to thank.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. This was very exciting school committee meeting, and I appreciate all of your feedback. I think that I'm new to the committee, but I've heard how tenuous it has been in the past, and I hope that as we go into the new year, we can continue this sort of dynamic where we can talk about difficult things respectfully, give each other time to speak patiently, because it does sound like you all have such a different perspective in your roles than I would think of just if none of you had come. So thank you so much for all that.
And thank you, everybody, for all
Yeah.
your hard work.
Thanks.
The last comment I have,
Yep,
I do agree with Jane. I do think we really should revisit capital cost, the entire section 6, is it? I agree, because there's some, I don't know, there's some language in there I don't necessarily agree with, but I am going to go and read PVR, whatever it is, and the entire section of 71, chapter 71, 16, because Mass General Law is such a bore to read, but
Yep.
anyway, I'm going to read it.
okay,
And on a personal level, I would love to revisit term limits, but that's me.
Yeah.
I do not believe in forever,
I know.
Oh, yeah.
right? I absolutely agree in term limits.
Yeah,
And I don't know how to structure that staggered. I don't know how
Right.
to structure that, how to incorporate current members into the grandfather.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, yep,
I just don't know how to do that.
right. Yeah, I know,
Getting people excited to be on the school committee would be a great way, right? So,
It'd be a
because
great
the
start.
idea is like, either way, it's going to be voted on every time. But if it's only one person on the ballot,
yeah, yeah,
I agree.
yeah, right.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
right.
volunteerism is
Right.
really down.
Right,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we know that. the
Yeah,
towns
I know.
will school.
So for us, since we're still meeting, we do have a vote that was written on here. So but I think that the next steps would be for this as amended to go back to DESI for the final legal review and then send it to the towns so the towns get the updated with what we just did, right? So we can update, have DESI review it, and then get the towns this updated copy.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
With regards to this process, when it goes back to the towns, we've been assured that we'll be receiving additional suggestions on the document, and that, again, just continues to build this document, correct? Or are we looking for some kind of ending after that feedback?
So I think it will kind of decide, it will depend on what we get from DESI.
Understood.
I think, and then we'll have to decide as a school committee how we want to move forward. Do we want to then continue to have meetings, or are we, I mean, because we voted at the last school committee meeting to keep everything as
Sure,
is. So
sure.
are we going to reopen the entire,
Okay,
section and
thank you. I
start?
just wanted to understand exactly how
Yeah,
how the
no, that's
path
great.
forward is.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I kind of had a similar question, because some of the things that I said leave draft as is, now that we've heard some of their thoughts, I would just like to know
Yeah.
more about what, because 3 minutes of discussion isn't, so particularly number 15, 16, 20, 28. Like, I just want to understand more
Yep.
before.
Yep.
Before
I
make my
agree.
mind.
I feel the same way.
Yep.
And I,
Then I would not send it to Desi.
Okay. Can you use the mic so it's recorded? Because our meeting's still going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is valid, having been on both the Finance Committee and Select Boards since 1990, that we always kept capital separate from operating. And the reason is for what was explained. And I don't understand why DESI did not throw it out, or DLS every year, when we do our reports
Yeah.
to the department.
You mean for the school committee? I mean,
Or the votes at town meeting.
right. So, well, I mean, there's a couple pieces. Like one would be, so I mean, DESI wouldn't necessarily get the process, right? They don't have.
Oh, Stephanie, can I sign that with you so they can? Okay, yeah.
Like if, DESI's not going to see the how it's made. So if you just send into DESI, right? DESI's not interacting with the towns. Like we tell them, okay, our budget's been approved for this amount of assessments. They don't know that actually there were 5 capital articles for PVRS, for example, because that's what we're talking about, right? Is PVRS, because that's the only one where.
Yeah, because we used to have our own.
Because towns have their own, so right,
Yeah.
so you can't separate out the specific articles. For example, you can't say, okay, of the 5, we like 2, and we're going to go forward and essentially amend the assessment amount, right? So not only DESI, but our legal counsel said no, it's one amount. So if there's 5 projects that you put forward, the only option you have is to vote down the whole budget. You can't say we don't like 2 of them.
And that is exactly what Bernardston did 2 years ago. Even though we provided them with legal guidance, DESI's guidance, our guidance, chapter and verse, we said if you try to do that, it is voting down the budget. And I just explained to Brian, Melissa put forward at that town meeting a motion to amend the budget. Jordan got up and spoke. I got up and spoke. All 7 members of the Select Board and the Finance Committee voted against the motion that Melissa was saying. But the town meeting members were persuaded by our argument, which was very calm and dispassionate, saying, we have received legal guidance, we have received DESI's guidance, we have shared all of this with the Select Board and the Finance Committee. If you do what they are recommending, you will be voting down the budget, and by a margin of something like 3-1. People voted for Melissa's amendment and for the district budget the way it was written. So it is the case that the towns have tried not to approve a capital project just 2 years ago.
But I think it's going to be getting harder and harder. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just giving Michelle, I'm just giving an example,
Yeah.
a recent example that makes the case that sometimes the towns do not want to approve a capital project.
Right, but, and also a capital project we can fund with free cash or stabilization.
Because now we're getting into a different, we're into a different flavor. So those are 2 different things. So as the district agreement is currently written, the towns fund the capital projects in their buildings, so that's not part of their assessments from the district. So that, of course, fund it with free cash. You can do a lot of different things. You can vote down 1 out of 3 because they're separate warrant articles.
Right.
That's all fine. But what Patricia's talking about is a suggestion that you can take individual pieces of the budget, similar to a line item veto. And that doesn't exist. That power doesn't exist. Now, I don't even know functionally how that would work. For example, it goes to Bernardston, and out of 5, they only like 4. And then when you take it to Leiden, you only let them see the 4 remaining. So I don't know the process of elimination. What I do know for sure is there may have been times in the past where that process of elimination happened and only 2 out of 5 things happen.
Right.
And then you could report to DESI and say, 2 out of 5, this is our budget, these are the assessments. You can do that. Me and Patricia don't want to, because that's not what our legal counsel said is legal and what DESI said is legal. So what we're essentially saying is we are listening to both the law and to DESI only because obviously under Patricia's leadership, she has a strong commitment to doing things, as they're written based on the law and DESI, which I think is a good, which is, I think, well, no, I mean, it's both funny and it makes a ton of sense to administer the district in that manner, especially given what happened as recently as 2019. So the bespoke, homemade solutions to how to run a district, that all may have happened, and ultimately, I don't know if they're a contributing factor, but the fact of the matter is, when that was being done, a big problem also occurred financially. So I think the guardrails created by DESI are good to use, and it's not actually like we have a choice. So ultimately, you could report back and say 2 out of 5 got passed. DESI won't know that process of elimination, right? They're just trusting. They're taking your word, saying, okay, you followed the appropriate legal way to do it. They're not going to audit every single district's budget process. But what we're saying is we don't want to manipulate or not give DESI the whole picture and go, yep, with a wink, we definitely did it the way we're supposed to. Here's our budget. I don't think that in the long run, and I think 2019 is an example of that, I don't think you get ahead. And that's not to say that anyone in the towns is trying to be tricky or not follow the rules, but Patricia and I are governed by those rules. The towns aren't. And so what we're saying is, as the people you hired to run the district, we're going to follow the rules as written by the governing organization. So I think that that's a good decision.
And part of the problem here is the towns go by DLS and, the schools go by DESI.
Well,
and we're not still meeting in the middle. But it should happen, the capital projects should happen at the budget subcommittee level and not everything go through to get to the assessments is what I'm saying. If you do it in a collegial manner and in an affordable manner. Because on the other hand, you could have said the old way, we could have afforded more. The towns could afford more for the schools, for Pioneer, by getting together and saying, oh yeah, do you have money, extra money out of the operating budget? And that's how it happened. I'm just saying,
sure.
You could vote the whole budget down,
Yeah.
I can see both sides because I work both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Which is wonderful that you have that influence, frankly.
Yeah, and it's getting tougher and tougher.
And I think you're right. But the capital one is the one a lot of people have issue with, and I understand that. But ultimately, I think that in terms of collaboration and past practice and experience, right, we've shown an ability to not have large assessment increases year to year. And so, and we heard, hey, the school budget takes up 54 to 59% of our budget, right? So in this methodology, right, those capital projects in the elementary buildings are in the school budget, right? So as it is now, there's the school budget, and then there's an ability to take even more, right? So what we're saying is we understand that if we come in whatever town you say has a building, whether it's Northfield or Bernardston, we say we need 14% more from you. That's going to get voted down. So it creates a really strong incentive for us to take a smaller piece of the pie, right? Because we know year to year we can only increase the overall budget. And now what we're saying is in that overall budget is also going to be the capital projects of the elementary. So what I'm saying is sometimes there's a level of I think a thought process that there's some duplicity or some negative feelings. What we're saying is we're doing well. We feel like we're going to continue to do well, and we'll take on the responsibility of paying for the capital projects. We understand it might mean less total money to the schools. We get that, and we'd like to be in charge of that. We're confident we can do it. And we understand that it might mean less total money. It likely will mean less total money from the towns, right? That's what everyone was telling us. But at the same time, it's saying, we give too much to the schools. Okay, we've written a district agreement that almost guarantees towns will give us less money for capital and operating combined, because there won't be a separate opportunity to take from stabilization funds and everything else. But at the same time, there is I feel like an incongruous or not logical accusation that the district will want to take more and more, because you're telling us that there will be funding sources that you'll no longer be able to use. It'll all be in the assessment, and everybody knows what would happen if we came with huge double-digit assessment increases in a single year. So what that puts is extreme pressure. If you see a big capital project, you say, well, guess what? We need to tighten up our operating budget this year, because we can't do both, because there's going to be no separate pot of money. And when we talked about it, no one has this recorded, but Patricia and I alone, when we discussed it, we talked about how this would create a pressure on us to overall bring a tighter budget, because there wouldn't be two separate funding sources. So we were explicit that that's our goal, and I think our recent history should support that we are both willing and able to do that. So really that was the impetus for doing it, and it's kind of unfortunately been twisted into something completely different, unfortunately.
And Jordan, I think the way that you just explained that was so incredibly helpful. I wish that everyone was still
know.
here for that
Hey,
conversation.
it's recorded.
Not
So
quite
my
sure why
question
everyone
now
left.
is, I'm certainly not ready to vote, to send this to Desi. I don't think any of us probably are. But what can we do from here? How can we make that collaboration happen to finish this document? I know.
I think having a meeting with them here again, and having someone like Melissa, who still has questions, be able to hear what the towns are saying. And I think it's going to take another year or two of passing a school budget for us to heal. And that's what I've been saying. We need to heal, and we need to be more collaborative.
Heal maybe, yes, but everybody needs to just trust that we're here for
And,
the right reasons.
there's again,
that
there-
us and the town.
There are also, there are many kinds of I want to point out, because this is on camera, there are, again, different kinds of collaboration. Bernardston recently went through the experience in which arsenic was found on a town-owned property. Here's how the district collaborated. We did all of the work. I did all of the work to talk with town representatives, Board of Health, Select Board, our district physician, with the state person. I wrote the draft agreement, the draft press. Because we are partners with Bernardston, and because the health of the town has an impact on the health of the district, I did all the work, even though it wasn't our problem. It was Bernardston's problem, but I knew I was better positioned to do the type of work that was necessary, so I put in so many hours of very high-level work. One of our elected officials' offices contacted me to say that was an exceptionally well-written announcement about what had taken place. That's collaboration.
Yes.
But I never heard anything from the town recognizing it as collaboration. Bernardston was set recently to approve an after-school program that very likely would not have been a legal program. And again, the district had been criticized by the town. Who did the work? The district did the work to research whether what the town was considering implementing would be okay. The select board didn't do the work, the finance committee didn't do the work. The district didn't have to do the work, but it would benefit us in the end if the town of Bernardston were not liable for a lawsuit because they approved an after-school program that was not technically legal. We did the work. Did anyone from the town acknowledge that collaboration? Never. So again, I say there are different kinds of collaboration, and it is frustrating to have folks come to these meetings, or the March 7th meeting earlier this year. I recently rewatched it. And assert make statements that are factually incorrect, that are legally not, suggest things for the district agreement that are not allowed by law, and berate the district, that's not collaborative. And I frankly have very little interest in being in person, like the last meeting in the Kiva, when one member was almost yelling us, shouting us down. I'm not interested in that. That's not collaborative.
I agree.
Hence, we spent so much time and energy trying to be collaborative by honoring every single suggestion, bringing it to the school committee, and giving you something to work with. So, Michelle, you say there needs to be more time, this, that, and the other. Maybe, but I'm not convinced that that will result in a better outcome than something like taking what people have said in writing and discussing it and providing feedback.
But us going over and over some of these things, we're never gonna get there.
Right.
You know,
So
we're just never gonna get there. I don't know how to explain it. Catherine said it pretty eloquently, I think, about what collaboration is all about. And
So when I
different-
just described what I did to help Bernardston,
I know, but I don't think that is helping to say, I didn't get any.
what I'm saying is the
I-
district does collaborate.
Yes.
Yes,
And
I'm
the
not
towns-
saying that
right.
you didn't.
I think
But
what
I-
I'm
The
sorry.
towns
It's-
don't recognize sometimes
Well,
when the
it's-
district has been collaborative.
I think what I'm hearing
Not all
though,
the towns.
I think what I'm hearing is that, and this is a theme everywhere. Communication needs to be better, right? So I'm wondering, is it that the town boards are feeling like they're not getting the information as easily, or like, are they, like, what is the barrier that the towns, they don't feel heard, or they're not able to see things until the meeting? Because I know, like, for myself, all of the town's websites are sort of archaic. Like, it's not so easy to navigate. Here's the new thing that we're talking about. So I wonder if that could be a goal that we could kind of even look at for the new year, is like, how do we access information? Because we're so used to, you swipe, you find what you need, you click on it, you're reading it ahead of time. But our websites,
But the
with all due
towns-
respect, are not
User-friendly.
efficient.
Absolutely.
And
no.
so is
You
it
know
that
why?
they just want to
don't
be
have the money
right?
because of what's going on. And that
But so is
never
that what
going
I'm
to-
hearing them say? Is like they wish that they heard that we would bring things to them ahead of time so they can process that, so that it's not such an emotional gut reaction in the room.
But I think they were. I mean,
they've
everything
gotten-
was
they've gotten
presented ahead of
information
time.
so-
yeah.
But
No,
you're-
I think
you're
so
spot
many
on.
times. To me, and again, I still consider myself a new committee member, and I'm not. I've been here for 2 years, and my head spins just about every time I walk out of this room. What I feel and sense is so much distrust, and it's ridiculous. It's time for people to respect one another. We are all elected, not just us. I'm talking about everyone in the town who deserves to be in their positions, and all of us who were elected here as well. We have to start from here, start trusting, and work together. It's ridiculous. My grandson is in this room. I can't wait to hear his impression of tonight's meeting, because to me, it wasn't collaborative. People were cutting each other off. People were making side comments on both sides, and it's not okay. And it makes me not want to be here. It doesn't have to be this way.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that you have, by my count, and it's probably very undercounted, 4 different groups attempting to come to a resolution on a multifaceted document that honestly does not have too many things that everybody is disputing. It's shocking. And you spent years working on that prior document, which people had seen in the towns. A lot of those folks are still on the boards. And yes, there's a discourse, certainly. And I'm seeing it for the first time. I'm like, wow, look at that, But the reality is, it still is what it is. You must do business. You must
Yes.
understand how to do business. We must work together. We must understand how to do that.
Right.
And I can understand the frustration and the enormous amount of work and the workload that is just in each of these rewrites, checking with DESE, and then having that disconnect between a town official coming up and saying, let's bring them here, because what I'm hearing may not be, I think, the complete story, or I'd like to hear it from them. I don't think that DESE as a thing can come to us
Right.
I don't think that it can. I think that excerpts from what they respond to may be able to be shared with people, maybe in a more written form. But again, that's more workload. I completely understand that. But I do want to say, from a very layman's perspective and somebody who's done a lot of negotiation, you're very close. We are all very close.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of water under this bridge. But I mean, you know, this is close.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
What is it, 28?
Yeah.
Now,
for saying
granted,
that.
we did hear that there will be more once they are covered,
Yeah.
but it may very well behoove us to
Yeah.
meet again and in a live moment tackle these things and create that goodwill that I think honestly can breach some of this stuff that is really, some of us are confused about things, and I think it's true on the other end. And I don't know how a town runs.
Right.
I mean, I know you know, and I ask you sometimes, but you know, so there are some things that I think we may have to walk a slower walk
Yeah.
in order to get there. But I think we could genuinely get this done,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
that is
Well
my
said.
opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was confused a little by my. Maybe I was way off the mark too. My understanding from the meeting, the 3 town meetings that were happening, and the edits that were provided to us was their edits. Like that was their. They never suggested that they were necessarily still continuing to edit, and so tonight, when it was mentioned that they're still working on it, I was like, what oh,
Yeah,
like
that
I thought you gave us the edit. I knew that they wanted more collaboration. They wanted to meet with us, and we facilitated that. This is our second meeting, but even the first meeting we had in the public forum, that was never mentioned that there was more edits coming, that they wanted to get back together, have another 3-town meeting. So that to me just spun me.
Yeah, I agree, because why wouldn't we have just spent more time in that meeting?
Correct. Because we
So I was
went through
confused, too.
we went through the entire document,
Yes.
and they presented all of the comments and the feedback in that meeting.
Right.
And their edits go to the very last page.
Yes.
Yeah.
We went through the full
Well, it was
document.
shocking.
Right. So I that totally.
Shocking news that there was more.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. 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 So
Yeah.
It was our timeline.
yeah.
What a productive meeting.
So there's more time.
All
Yep.
have our vision for how we want to.
And
Yep.
a note about time. So we don't have unlimited time if you want this on the town meeting warrant for this spring.
I made a note. What is
Do you wanna
that
walk through that? Do you
time?
want me to walk through it? Wanna-
What's the time?
I don't know it off the top
Okay.
of my head.
So when is the first town meeting?
Either Bernardston or, no, not Bernardston
It's early.
anymore.
It's early. It's
April.
May or April.
April, was there an April one? Let
So
me see.
things have to be, so the school committee absolutely, under the district agreement, has the ability to say to the select boards, here's an amended district agreement, put it on the warrant, please. Like, and the school committees, they have to put it on.
Right.
Things have to get onto the warrant at least 45 days before the meeting. We have to send it to the towns,
No,
Michelle.
annual town meeting is well, they close the warrant.
Yes.
Each town does it differently.
Okay, I believe
Yeah.
we need to
Well,
get it to-
Northfield might
It would
do
be-
45 days.
It would probably
we
be
don't.
prudent to think 45 days before.
Yeah.
Right.
So can you find the towns will want to appropriately send the draft to their own council. Right?
Right.
And they'll want to talk about it at their select board meeting. Okay, so,
So now we're into like beginning of March, February.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in
so-
Feb for sure.
so you don't have until April
Right.
to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
When's Northfield's town meeting? Is it in April?
I don't know.
We should, I mean.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's on the budget subcommittee. I can pull it up right now.
Okay, excellent.
And the other thing, I think they're going to share lawyers. They're going to do it as 3 towns. They're not going to have each
Well, that's-
separate
yeah,
warrant.
that's their-
So
That might be
Town meeting
better.
is May 5th.
May 5th. Okay.
So May 5th is the
So
first
go-
town meeting. That is
Oh.
Northfield. Okay. So,
Bernardston's got a Saturday one this year, is that accurate?
so a month before is the beginning of April, a couple weeks more. But I don't know if it's 45 days, but you ought to be conservative and think
Sure,
you want
sure.
to get it in. So, third week of March, we want to make sure it's to the towns. well, they need to put it on their warrant, which means they're gonna, they have
gonna
said
send
they will
it
need
to their
extensive
lawyers,
time for their,
right.
you wanna get this out in January, is what
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking.
think so.
So, would we make multiple other sort of special committee meetings and we would invite the same group of
Yeah.
folks and maybe?
Yeah, well, and all we did was we just set, not all, the amount of time that Patricia put into structuring an email and inviting all the FinComs. And this meeting is no different necessarily than every other like subcommittee district agreement meeting that we met 24 times with. The difference is there was an email sent out directly notifying them of this and saying, please come meet us.
So what I'm hearing is that's what they would like all the time. That's what I heard
Correct.
was that they would like information about, hey, just a heads up, because it is so difficult to find information on the website. Unless you are searching for it.
It is. We just can't personally invite them to every meeting that we have. I mean, that would just be administratively impossible. So that's where it goes back and forth, where we had many public meetings because every
They know when
district,
the meetings are. Everything is posted.
you know.
The folks who are sharp, they know where to look on the websites for the postings. They
We had a full contingent budget subcommittee.
yeah, Bernardston sent 3 people last week to budget. They know where the meetings are posted.
Yeah.
It seems with tonight's presentations and the folks who are representing the collective, towns, that they have a strong interest in collaborating.
Yep.
Is it possible that we could arrange for something similar to this, but as a working, a kind of point by point again, which they have requested? Is that in our plan?
I mean,
Can we do that?
We could. I think there's a difference of also each of us kind of understanding what the district agreement is and what it says and what it means, and also going through and reworking the work we've already done.
Right.
So my question would be, if we had another public forum like this, open meeting, what would be the goal for that?
There were several things specifically they mentioned that I think that they would enjoy talking about.
Okay.
Particularly the
Capital costs.
Yes.
Yep.
And I think that their perspective on how they handle things and their scheduling and all those other things that are outside of everybody's purview, or maybe you all know. I think that might be a good faith moment to have a working meeting based on the document we have right now.
Yep.
And work with what we've talked about right now, which is again based on their published comments about the
Right.
original document. So
Right.
I think this is a good roadmap because there was
Okay.
plenty of discussion
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And I very much respect the enormous amount of work that goes into each and every change when you're checking with council and you're checking with DESI. And I think there is a disconnect between what is legal or procedural or we are allowed to do and what other people want things to do. And we do have to specify those things because they can eliminate a huge amount of discussion.
Yeah.
Just, because it's
Yeah.
not legal,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as you put MGL or CMR, they can look it up. That's what, it's
Yeah.
done on the town meeting
Yeah.
warrant. And you
Right.
don't go through everything. You
Right.
just put MGL, blah, blah, blah.
So, I mean, hearing their voices today, I would definitely want to, I would
Yeah.
hope we could.
Yeah.
And if we can't, because of some other reason, I'd love to hear it. And,
Yeah.
and I respect all those views.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we can. I think, like you said, capital costs, they have more input or more suggestions about that. I think maybe depending on, we need administration to really be helping us with, so this is a lot of ask we're asking them, because having Jordan to explain capital costs or go over this again, right, after he did this multiple times for our district agreement is subcommittee is a lot.
And And I don't think any of us mind that. I think it's that it's really just the time of year where you know, it all comes from the same pot, and it's not just me. You know, obviously I have to confer with a lot of people about the budget, right? I mean, really, you know, we also need the budget by February 13th, and what we don't want to do is get a great district agreement and a terrible budget for FY26, because those two things, honestly, are both about the engendering trust Yep, I think that those are the issues that we come up with, and I think there are many other things that are also happening in January, and super potentially formative for the future of the district type things, and everything's going in the right direction. But I think that if no one's asked me, I'm just throwing it out there. My opinion would be if there was going to be additional conversations, it would have to be extremely limited. So if we really think that we've identified as a group 2 things to talk about, like number 15 and number 16, then I would say let's talk. I mean, again, this is not, I understand everyone needs to consider this, but I would say we are meeting to discuss 15, 16 from 6 to 6:45 or whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that to be, you know, I mean, there needs to be much, at this time of year, there will need to be much tighter guardrails, because if it is, no one, especially Patricia, no one minds working. But the question, I mean, it all comes from the same source. So if we say, okay, yeah, we're going to put in another 30 hours focused on the district agreement and ignore the budget until, you know, a week before, that's not going to lead to a great process, because I cannot make a budget with you know, I need a ton of support from Patricia. You know, I mean, she's the superintendent.
And I heard what you said about side talking. I engaged in side conversations.
Well, you're not the only one.
No, but I want to acknowledge it. I did that. I do not believe, let me be frank, I do not believe that there are some folks who were here tonight who will come to agreement with the school committee. And I am wondering where the school committee stands on their thinking about that, and how comfortable you are with saying, we have heard you. We have heard you. We heard you again. We got your comments in writing. We've heard you. We don't agree with you. So I just hear this stuff out, you know, if we listen more, if we listen better, if we collaborate better, you know, somehow, I don't, you know, it doesn't always mean that people come to agreement.
Sure, absolutely.
So I wouldn't say it like that. I would do like Jordan suggested. The chairs of the select boards hold their meetings, and they hold it, we do times. Like, you could be on the agenda from 6:45 to 7. You're held to that time, right? When we do interviews, it's a half an hour.
Yes.
And that's it,
Yes.
right? I say let's do it again. Give them that voice. Let's have a collaborative meeting. And then it goes to DESE, to the towns. And then they're going to do what they want with the warrant. They can put the warrant on the way it is, and the select boards can do amendments to it. And that's how it'll come to a vote on town meeting.
So do we want
But-
to go through and determine like what specific numbers?
Oh, God, I wouldn't go each number.
No, I mean, like right now, we could go through and say, okay, because I circled a number of things, like a few, just 3 things that I felt like were helpful to hear from them, and maybe they had more to say. So do we want to,
Sure.
for our next meeting, kind of identify and put a
Sure. What do you have circled?
So I felt like they had more to say about 15 and 16, and Jordan, your example that you gave us was phenomenal, and I wonder, I would probably benefit to hear from the way that you said it, but also, like, even little things like, I would like to hear more about number 28, and the whole, about the trust fund, and just to make sure that if we do remove that paragraph, that it wouldn't be in disservice. I'd just like to understand more as a new, you know. It sounded like they had more to say about that.
Yeah. It's,
You don't have to
yeah.
listen to anything I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, because my thought process was, okay, if we, let's do, another public forum specifically around capital costs, specifically also about dividing the capital costs from whether it should be together or whether it should be separate, right? And I feel like that is a major issue of contention still, and I don't mean that in like a but if we specifically said, okay, let's do another public forum like what we've done, this is the agenda, this is what we're going to be discussing, it's going to be about capital costs, it's going to be about, that is it, that is what we are here to discuss, 6 to 7.
And if it would be helpful, we could probably narrow it down to really, are we going to assess for capital projects in town-owned buildings?
Yes, and narrow
Or
it
not,
down even
because
further.
we can't separate them, right? So, to discuss, like it's illegal. We're not allowed to do it.
Right.
Right.
So there's we can't, because the point is, even if we said, okay, we've come to agreement and we're going to memorialize this in our disagreement. The thing is, it wasn't memorialized in the past disagreement. That was just a past practice people did. If we memorialize in the disagreement that we're separating out, all we'll get is Destiny go, that's wild. No, you can't do that. Because they've already done that to us.
right.
They've already said you
The
can't.
next meeting is going to be like, I feel like you explained things so well, and I loved your presentation that you gave us about the voting. And I wonder if there's a couple slides even that you could just show, kind of like, and this is what DESI will allow, and sort of explain because sometimes people need a visual.
And if I can add, like the stuff about capital costs that we would be discussing. So the reason we changed the language isn't, I know the thought is, I know Jane said it and Stan was upset. When we discussed it, we didn't say, what we should do is see if we can just push stuff through and anger people. What do you think? That's not how Patricia and I talk. What we discussed with Desi was we explained, this is how we do it. And they're like, wait. You can't do it like that.
You have no mechanism currently.
Yeah.
We have no mechanism to fix something in the elementary buildings. There is no control we have. And the current mechanism also requires that the towns manage. So you'll remember the bathroom project at Northfield. The town didn't really want to manage it, and they were trying to push it onto us, even though the district agreement says they're supposed to manage it. This would make things much clearer. And we're taking on more responsibility if we manage. Anyway.
Explain it.
Yeah. And but the thing is, and say, for example, at the end of that process, we say we're going to change some stuff. The issue we are coming into, too, is then there's this cascade effect throughout the document. And then you try to work a bespoke solution. And again, Desi will say, well, actually, that doesn't work. The document that has been created works for Desi. And that is ultimately equally as important. I know there might be some people who don't like the document and think that there's bad motivation behind it. There's no bad faith motivation. The document and the language in it is specifically so it will pass muster, so that no matter what, when we talk and debate and discuss, it would be silly to then pretend that we had a really great document that would never pass DESI. What we have now is a document that definitely DESI will pass. And there are, I think Patricia put it clearly, like, it could get to the point where, well, unfortunately, the language in this might not be acceptable to 14 people who are present, but it definitely works for DESI. And ultimately, at a town meeting, a much larger group of people with different interests, and it would get a crack at it. And in the interim might be the time for even additional collaboration, meaning January school committee says yes. From February to May, we're talking to people and saying, well, no, I understand that you think this language has this motivation. That's not it. Here's this conversation. And then there's no contentious aspect of, hey, we're going to force you to change it, because no, there's no changing it, but this is what we are thinking. And maybe that could be the point where bridges can be built. Because right now, it's pretty clear. We don't want you to assess. I'm not misunderstanding anything. It's very clear, right? Like the separating we can't do, it's illegal. We don't want you to assess for the elementary buildings because we think you're going to slam all these projects in. I don't think that that's supported by past experience of how we've budgeted. Like, for example, at PVRS, the capital assessment this year is, drumroll, $0. We're paying for them ourselves. So we don't have in the previous year was, I don't know, 50 grand. I mean, and the projects we asked for would be similar. We're not going to suddenly just do a roof just to make Jane mad. We're not. We're not. We want the assessments to be reasonable because guess what? All the kids in the district are in our care. We care about them. We understand if we do things that are bad for their parents, it's not good for our district. None of us are thinking like that. We're not trying to do a tricky thing. So, I mean, ultimately, Patricia said it very succinctly and appropriately, and I've talked on and on, is it might just be that, yeah, probably got to vote on this one because this one will work. People might have reasons to not like it, but if we are continually reasonable and explain our motivation over time, it may become more acceptable. But it won't ever become anything if we just debate it.
So are you saying we essentially make the difficult decisions and then have almost a debrief session where we explain more why the decisions were made based on, is that what you're saying? Instead of having a whole nother.
So that's,
Could happen after the budget when everybody has more time, February to May, to convince people that they should vote for it. That would be, no, I have no stake to actually make
Right.
recommendations.
yeah.
That really
So-
helped.
Yeah. So I,
Would you say more?
It's got to stop somewhere, right? We're never, unfortunately, it's reality. We're never going to get to a point where we all agree, and so this is a product that DESE is going to accept, as you said. We have good reasoning behind it. I mean, I wasn't on the subcommittee. I'm trusting my school committee, the work. We just can't keep pushing it out. I wanted to push it out. I wanted to have one more meeting, but after you said what you said, I think we need to vote to send this to DESE and have some strong collaboration efforts going forward. Stronger.
okay.
And thank you
So,
for giving us this time.
Yeah. Can we do? Yeah, I mean, we can. We can definitely do that. We had a motion ready to go to kind of move it forward and do that. So we can do that. Is that?
Yeah, I think we're in a difficult position. I think there's a lot of bad feelings. There's a lot of mistrust.
Yep.
And how do we move forward? I agree. I don't know that we're not ever going to all agree. How do we move forward and then continue to build that trust that the district made these changes not so that we could just ask the towns to write a blank check, but to give the district more responsibility for getting these projects done and carefully choosing which the priorities and being responsible to the towns to not just ask them to write a blank check. And to your point, the current mechanism gives us the ability to take that piece out and say, this is the budget. And by the way, you need to give us another 50,000 or 20,000 on top of the budget that was voted. So I think that, that puts a lot more pressure on the district. It takes away some funding sources, but it also, in respect to the towns managing, we have to stay within that predictability for them.
Yeah. My gut, where I'm at right now, is it's 9:00, and I feel like our conversations that have happened the past 2 meetings, but tonight didn't feel like it was over. It didn't feel to me that when people got up and left, that we would just be necessarily voting to say, let's move this on. I think there's an assumption that we are going to have another public forum. And so I think that if we don't, then it's going to be continuing on this, this mantra that we are not collaborative. And so I really feel that we should have a very succinct and short kind of final third meeting. This is where we're coming from. We have had 2 public forums. We have had multiple meetings. This is our response to the capital costs. This is what it is. And we're not going to go back and go through these 28 questions again. This is it. We're going to have an hour meeting. We're going to talk about capital costs. We're going to each explain our sides if we need to. And then we're going to make a decision. I don't know what anybody's calendar looks like. This is the toughest part. We have been traditionally keeping it on Thursdays because that is when we meet. But it's when select boards don't have meetings. They have meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so I was curious at what.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, of course.
Is there a vote? Are we voting whether or not we're going to send this to DESI, or are we just scheduling another meeting?
So we haven't voted, but we can.
All right, because why are we looking at calendars? That's my question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, because I had just, so we can go back to, we can make a motion. Let's do that. I'll make a motion to amend the district agreement as discussed tonight and to send the amended draft to DESI for final legal review.
Second.
Are you allowed to make a motion? Genuine question.
Or
I can remember at the meeting.
No, she said, I'm seeking a motion.
Okay.
So she said, I'm seeking a motion to da-da-da, and then someone said,
So moved.
So moved. Oh, okay.
I'll second that.
There.
What was the motion? What's right
To amend the district agreement as discussed tonight and to send the amended draft to DESI for final legal review.
Okay. And then do you think that would be bad? Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. This is
Yeah,
comment
well,
time.
now
Go
there's
ahead.
comment.
Would
No,
that be
that's
back in time for the next meeting? So then we can say, this is what Desi said on the final review, or no?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that we're scheduling a next meeting. I think that's what we're voting on. Just like send this as amended to DESI. So my thoughts are, again, I want to state that I started after the group left. I started with we have to have another meeting, and now I'm convinced that we need to send it to DESI with this language that we're sending a strong message here. We want to collaborate with the towns. The administration did a great deal of work, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and making sure that this is legal and correct and to the best of our knowledge what we really want it to be. And we want to collaborate with the towns now and going forward more than we ever have.
Okay. Yeah, discussion. It's been moved and seconded, right?
Yep.
So we're in the discussion.
Yeah, we're in discussion.
Yep.
I have both of these options floating around in my head, but one thing I do think that is substantial is the concern about what is it called? It's the expenditures, or someone help me.
capital costs or the
What the towns are having trouble with
Oh.
how
The
they can
special
fund
funds.
it and things like that. And that part I think is a fundamental difference between the way that they run their system and the way we're looking at it. What you've described is excellent. That's the only thing that makes me pause is that very, very large subject that they all seem to be very concerned about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what it means is that it's very likely that over time they'll spend less money, right? Because they'll get a single educational assessment that's an all-in-one. And what I would say is, what that means is, we're still going to have the same focus of bringing an assessment increase that we feel is reasonable, right? If anybody reads local papers, whether it's this year, the prior year, or going forward, right, there have been lots of towns and districts talking about 8%, double digit. How are we going to manage without ESSER? And it's not to say we're perfect, but we didn't have that conversation. What we had is, here's $700,000. Here are assessments that are, I think less than 1% or negative in 0.64, right, 0.64% budget increase. But I think FY24 ultimately the assessments were negative. FY25 a 3% increase, and gave back money. I don't think that it's in our DNA how we want to run the district to say, and once we get this authority to be able to assess for capital projects, the elementary, let's just go crazy. That isn't what we're trying to do, because we understand, we really do, and we understand the perception that would lead to, right? Any of the other initiatives you want to get done are going to be very difficult if people think you're being fiscally irresponsible for no particular reason. So I think we're putting greater pressure on ourselves. Sometimes I think maybe this is the best, it's more pressure on us, right? So that's ultimately what I think is what'll happen is the total educational spend would likely decrease, and so I don't necessarily think that's the concern. I think that,
I do think if you explained it to them in the manner that you did, I think it's going to help. And I agree with Melissa. I was going to say, I like what you said, to have one more collaboration, and I think we left it, that we're going to have something more. And I think we can start building goodwill. I don't think we should just cut it off. And I've been saying we should be collaborating for a year now about this. And so let it go. We didn't collaborate. We didn't do what we said we're going to do, having, a member from, the community on this.
And I think administratively and financially, we've done a couple other good collaborations, right? I mean, in going into FY24, right, the big story was, there weren't bonuses, and administrators are getting paid too much, and comments to that extent. And then the school committee, in collaboration with the administration, when we were organized and had our finances clear enough, went ahead and just gave everybody record pay increases over 3 years, provided those bonuses. So, we may not collaborate, meaning doing things, taking direct orders from other government bodies, but what we do is take a deliberative approach, and when we hear reasonable feedback, and we know we can do the thing, we do it. And I think it's kind of similar with the district agreement. It isn't like, the only way we're going to be seen as super collaborative is to not assess the elementary buildings capital costs. Now, so there doesn't even need to be any more discussion. If our goal is to be seen as collaborative, we just have to make that decision and figure out with DESE, which will take a ton of time because they've already explained to us that, how we were doing things previously wasn't super easy to write up. So that's the thing. I think it may not be immediately right now there's a way to be considered collaborative, but there is a way right now to get a district agreement that'll get approved by DESE, and that then we can over time collaborate. So I think that they may be two different things. We may not be able to get a district agreement that can get that could get approved by DESE and be considered collaborative. Maybe impossible.
I say vote Jordan Burns for president 2028.
Vice president. I already have a president.
Well, I say let's call the vote because I'm getting tired.
I'm ready. My poor grandson.
Yeah. So I think I just want to be clear that if we're voting this, is people's intent that we do not have a third meeting, or is that separate?
I think if we vote right now that this is good to go, then we should still have another vote as to a third meeting to either like extend an olive branch and say, we sent it, and also we hear your concerns, and this is our follow-up as to why we sent it. Is that, or we say, no, it's not good to go, we have another meeting, and then after that meeting, we say, it's good to go.
That was what I was wondering about what the intent was. So
There is a motion and a second, so we have to vote on hers.
correct.
Yeah.
So the intent of this would be to just send it and then not have a third meeting. That would be the
vote.
affirmative. That would be the
That
vote.
would be the vote.
Okay.
if you voted yes.
Okay. All right. So, a new little trick that we also saw at this last meeting was it was also helpful if the chair just called out a person's name just in order. So what I'm going to start doing at meetings is I'll just say, Gretchen, go, 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 go. And so then we don't need to like debate on who goes next.
I see.
I'll
what
just
you're
call.
saying.
I'll
Yeah.
just say,
Okay,
Gretchen,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, it can be, yes, oh,
Yeah.
right, because we don't have anyone remote.
No one
Correct.
remote.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can just do,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's true.
Thank you,
Yes,
no.
thank you.
It's-
Yeah.
No, it's 9:15, good catch,
Yeah,
thank
we're
you.
getting tired.
Thank you. Okay, so, motion has been moved and seconded.
So the motion we're voting on is to send the amendment draft to Desi for the final legal review.
Mhm.
And then if we vote in the affirmative, we will not have another forum.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Okay, so then we would do all in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, so the motion doesn't pass. Okay, so that means the next motion would be to schedule a third and final.
What would be the alternative? I think we just voted that we're not going to send it to Desi, so doesn't that mean that we're having a meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, or, yeah, so I guess we
Yeah.
don't
So
have
we
to
won't-
vote
we
on
don't-
that,
right,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Schedule it.
So we just have to schedule it. So,
The 2nd and the 9th, we already have a bunch of meetings.
that was my, well, my question was the 16th
Oh, shoot, I won't be.
was a the 16th is a Thursday.
I won't be here again.
But we already have, so there's already meetings on the 2nd. There's already we have a school committee on the 9th. The 16th is open. The 23rd, there's a school committee meeting. The 30th would be open. So
That's going late.
It's good.
that's going, yeah, that's going,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm
No,
going
no,
to
no.
interject,
You're,
but that's- if
nope,
you're
that,
trying
I
to
was just going to
decide-
say that. So no,
Oh,
the
no.
9th, no, we've got a lot for the 9th. So I would say the 16th at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'll try to do it remotely.
Yes, and then we can, so,
That won't work.
so for the agenda, is everyone feeling that it's really about the capital costs and about not separating? Okay.
Yep.
So,
I think there were some other points. That, I mean, if you're
Yep,
trying to
go ahead.
address them, I think how the school committee is elected,
Oh,
edit number
yeah,
one.
that's
I
right.
mean,
Yep.
Elections.
You are opening
yeah.
this,
That is true, that one.
term limits less, so, I mean, I don't, but it's not
Nope.
just.
I was just trying to narrow it down to their biggest,
1 hour.
to keep it, yeah, to an, yes, there was some other back and forth and they didn't necessarily love. But I feel like what I kept hearing was the capital section that, I feel I'm welcome to hear more from their perspective, where for number one, with our elected of school committee members, I'm pretty set with how we do it. Me personally, I don't want to go into proportional.
what was the woman's name? I'm so sorry. Is it Lynn with the red sweater who was saying that they still had more?
Jane.
Oh,
Jane.
So it sounded like they still had more to talk about. So I wonder if there's a way to communicate with Jane to say, like, before this committee meeting, whatever you all have as additional things that were outside of capital costs, can they send those to you ahead of time instead of bringing them in the meeting? So we have them, so we can review their other concerns before the next.
Well, I don't know if we'll have enough time to review their other concerns. I think our messaging out to them would be, this is our third and final meeting. We're going to be discussing capital costs.
And I think it is likely they are going to say you have not given them enough time to hold.
Correct.
They are just,
Yep,
they will
they're
say,
yep.
You are not collaborating, you are not giving us sufficient time, we want to continue meeting. That is.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, I know.
I'm just saying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, see you later.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so these numbers we will be focusing on are the following numbers? Or do we know?
15, 16.
If you that's something we could do now, or that's something I
Or-
could do.
Instead of the question, go to the district agreement and just pick out the,
I think there were a number
Just
in
capital
the
Not
capital
all of
cost
the edits
section.
are redlined in that draft, Michelle.
oh,
You would
okay.
need to look at the list of edits.
Oh, okay.
Let's use this because they have that distribution of it too, so they
15, 16.
Did they have questions about 16? Once Jordan
Yes.
just
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, okay.
I think so. I thought, were they okay with this?
I checked 16 off.
I think 16 is fine.
Yeah.
16
Okay.
is fine.
I think it was the
They didn't say anything about
second.
emergency, so that's
15.
okay.
I think 15 is
15.
probably the biggest one. I mean, there would be
15 is the biggest one.
right, and then
What about 18? No, not 18.
no, not 11.
No,
There's the
No, never
capital,
mind.
and then there's
Was it
two
22?
separate votes.
Or was 22 just null and void because it was
Just help us end this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Right, so
20,
it's 14,
ultimately
14
22.
and 15 are the big ones, because 14 is about separating out as separate warrant articles. And then 15 is really just the idea of having the capital projects in the elementary buildings on town warrant. So I think that the 14 and 15 are the most contentious.
Yep, I agree.
okay.
I'd like
mean-
to suggest that we
Well, sorry.
not, I don't want to direct Jordan to make slides.
Okay.
Or
Yep.
there's, I hear
That's
you.
fine.
I like a nice slide.
I like a visual, but it's
I like a
Yep.
nice slide. If the way that Jordan was explaining things tonight felt
Yep.
more than acceptable to
Yep.
you, then he doesn't have a lot of extra work to do.
Yep.
He
Yep.
would share his take again.
Yep.
And then you all are talking, but
Yep.
that means he doesn't have to do more work.
No.
Okay, great, you got it.
No.
Great.
No.
So is it 14 and 15 that will be?
So
focused?
14 and
Is there
15.
any others?
14 and 15.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
how do
Okay.
we, you have a mechanism of contact?
Yeah, so I'll draft the agenda
Okay.
and then I'll work with Patricia to get it out and shared and craft an email to
Just,
let that, yeah.
do we have to vote to have this meeting, or are we good?
We have to vote to adjourn.
You don't have to vote to hold the
Can we,
meeting.
can we also,
Yep.
can we also bring up 28 at the next meeting? Because I really would like to understand more about why, I just don't quite understand, when she brought up the trust fund to a town, like, I get it, I get the idea of like inequities to a town, but if somebody says, I wanna give this money to Northfield Elementary School, I just wanna understand and hear from them more about like, because they were talking about specific trusts and grants, and I don't know if that's worth putting it on there,
Mm-hmm.
just to hear even a minute or two more about
Yep.
that.
Okay. Okay.
And
So-
number 28?
14, 15, 28.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. So meeting adjourned at 9:20.
Thank you.